good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to the Bloody Disgusting Network. The following show is just horrifying. Beware.
You're obsessed with her, and you're obsessed with her daughter!
All right, easy, Geraldo.
And welcome back to Horror Queers. We're talking Judy Jurgenstern, we're talking 100% Cotton, and we're not talking about Gale Weathers' bangs. And I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we're talking, you're obsessed with her, and you're obsessed with her daughter!
The line readings are just everything in this movie, really, aren't they?
I was debating between that or my lawyer liked that.
Yes. Honestly, this movie is a gay man's fantasy, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say a gay man's fantasy, maybe not a Scream fan's or a horror fan's fantasy, but, y'all, we are talking Scream 3.
Mm-hmm.
And it is all for the cause of celebrating the start of our third year of this podcast. So
yes,
we're kicking it off with a 3, and we are going to continue the month with a bunch of 3s. So have fun guessing what we're going to be doing.
This is true, yeah. I was looking back last year and I realized we kind of did this last year, except that we only did it for the first 2 weeks. So we did Scream 2, and then we did Hostel Part 2, and then at that point we just tried to find spiritual successors to films from the first year. This year, it's all third entries in franchises.
I'm really excited, and I'm also really happy that we made it through 2 years, Joe, and, you know...
No one died. Well, actually, a lot of people died last year, but you know what?
God.
It's 2021. Let's move on.
No, we're supposed to keep it funny because that's what the writers of Scream 3 wanted to do. I'm sorry, the writer and everyone else involved in Scream 3 wanted to do, except for Wes Craven. He was like, guys, no.
He was like, guys, I just want to make music of the heart, so can we just move this along, please?
There are so many things. Now, Joe, you started this off by saying we're not talking about those bangs. Why are we not talking about the bangs?
You know what? Everybody makes jokes about the bangs. Yes, the bangs are terrible. Fucking Courtney Cox recognizes that the bangs are terrible. We've all had the joke, and now let's move on.
I'm of the same mindset, and I love the two videos that she's done spoofing those bangs, but I think that once that happens, like once the actor or actress who has been made fun of for 2 decades is in on the joke, I think then we can, like, stop. It was cute for a while, but I'm so tired of, like, mentioning Scream 3 and everyone's like, oh my god, the bangs. I'm like, yes, I know.
Yes,
I know
we
they
all
suck.
know. We all fucking know. We've made the joke, and now it's time to let it go. R.I.P. the bangs.
But that's kind of how I feel about this movie, right? Like, let's not beat around the bush here. Scream 3 is considered the worst entry in this franchise by many, although some people have moved on to say 4 is the worst entry in the franchise, and to that I say, fuck all y'all. But there's a kind of a running bit of things that people don't like about this movie, and I have a little list, because I don't want to harp on all these things too much. I mean, we will go into it a bit, but I really think that what we're going to discover while discussing this film and its production is that its production is really, really what fucked this movie over.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Which is interesting, considering 2 had an equally tumultuous production, but ended up perfect. I don't know.
Right.
So I've got a list of things that I think people, like, talk about the most when you mention Scream 3, and I just want you to say love it or hate it, or if you want to elaborate and say, that's okay too.
All right, toot it or boot it. Here we go.
All right, the bangs.
At this point, it's a toot. Let's celebrate the fucking bangs.
Roman.
Oh no, it's a boot for that one.
The cameos.
Oh, I come down 50-50. Part of me loves them, and part of me hates them.
Patrick Dempsey's cop.
If it's the hair, then it's a toot. If it's the character, it's a boot.
The comedy.
I like the comedy. I think a lot of the comedy actually works, so I'm gonna toot it.
The voice changer that can copy everyone's voices.
Ooh, that's a bit of a Hollywood fantasy, isn't it? But you know what? You gotta go with it to enjoy this film, so we'll say toot.
Oh, that's a boot for me.
Okay.
Parker Posey.
Bitch, move on. Come on.
I know.
We all know how we feel about Parker Posey.
I did not say the things that people hate about this movie. I said the things that people talk about when they talk about Scream 3.
Right. Okay. No, I mean, to me, Parker Posey is the highlight of this movie, and I think for a lot of people.
She is, and that's really the end of my list, because we'll talk about why Neve Campbell wasn't on set for a lot of this movie. We'll kind of talk about how every character involved in Stab 3 has nothing to do except for Parker Posey.
Yeah.
You know, it's just one of those things. And so these are the things that people talk about, and we will talk about these things, but I don't want this to just be, we don't want this to just be like a hate fest. I don't...
No. Yeah.
So, okay, tell me about your experience with this movie, Joe. Like, when did you first see it, and what is your relationship with Scream 3?
Okay, so as we talked about last year for Scream 2, I was fully on board by the time Scream 2 came out, and then it was so stunningly good, like shockingly good. I was ready for Scream 3 the following year, because I thought that this was setting the precedent. And then when Scream 3 starts to get delayed, I didn't get worried, but I was like, oh man, where are my favorites? I thought I was going to get to see them. By the time Scream 3 actually shows up, I was ready to be excited for it again. And I remember I went opening night with my sister, packed audience, and the energy was there, but it wasn't quite the same. Like, you could tell the people were struggling with some of the jokes. They didn't love the characterizations. It just didn't all come together. And I will say I haven't watched this film as many times as I have all of the other Scream films. It is my least favorite, but I have, I think like a lot of people in the last 5 or so years, made a bit of a reappraisal of it and discovered, you know what, it's really not as bad as I thought. It's the weakest Scream, but it's not a bad movie.
I agree. I actually think that if this was just as like a standalone slasher that came out, obviously without like all the connections to Scream 1 and 2, like, I think people would probably like it a bit more. It wouldn't have been the hit that Scream was, but I think that people wouldn't look at this and be like, oh, it sucks so bad. But I think because it's coming after the perfection that is 1 and 2, that's why people come down on it so hard. And also why when people shit on 4, I'm like, y'all, 4 is like a grand high step up from this. But for me, like, so this movie is either like a C+ or a B- given my mood any day of the week. I will confess that after I watched it this week, I was very much in like not a good mood, and so I was like, that's a C+.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing that, okay, so 2 things. So before I get into my story, 1, this is also a 2-hour slasher movie. It's 116 minutes long, just like all the other films. I think the only one that's the shortest one is the 4th one with like an hour 45, but like 1, 2, and 3 are pretty much all 2 hours, right? This is the only one, and on this rewatch especially, where I really felt the length of this movie. I do think this movie drags quite a bit.
It has pacing problems, yeah.
It really does, and part of that is because of Neve Campbell's schedule. She's not in the movie enough. But, like, I think even because the kills are so weak, and we'll get into why that is later, but of course everyone probably knows it's because of Columbine. I mean, partly because of Columbine.
Right.
It's just, I didn't find it quite as entertaining. The funny thing is, and I don't remember if I said this on our Scream or Scream 2 episodes, although I probably did, I saw these movies for the first time when I was in 8th grade. And my mom was out of town for a week, and my dad rented me a bunch of R-rated movies. And 2 of them were the first 2 Scream films.
Yes, and you liked this one the most at the time.
Yes, and 2 was my least favorite. I really didn't like the ending of 2 with Billy's mother. But so I watched the first 2, and I was like, cool, like, I get it, like, I really love these movies. I love the first one, I don't love the second one that much. And I made my dad watch the third one. So when I got the third one, we had already returned Scream 1 and 2. So basically, I watched Scream 1 and 2 once each, and then I just had 3. And because it was the end, this is 8th grade, this would have been like 2002, 2003. I watched Scream 3 at least 5 times in a week. Because I just had the VHS.
Because it was there, and you were in 8th grade, and you were starved for horror content.
Well, and I really liked it, and I really thought it was funny. And we'll get into some of like the weird shit about the movie that doesn't really work, but at the time, I really, really liked it. And some stuff I still like, some stuff I don't. It is weird, though, right? Like, you can tell that this is written by someone other than Kevin Williamson.
Yeah, I remember at the time really feeling it and feeling like the film was desperately trying to ape Kevin Williamson's dialogue. And, we've had quite a few conversations about this second wave of slashers that are trying to do what Kevin Williamson did and don't do it very well. And in hindsight, I actually don't feel like Aaron Kruger is trying to do it as much. I think he's trying to keep the meta stuff but I don't think he's trying to go for that really playful, witty banter as much as I initially thought back in 2000.
I think that's my thing, though. I think he's okay at the humor. I think the meta stuff, like we've talked about meta so many times, right? Where it flows well, it feels organic, or it's just like it lands with a thud. And I do feel like a lot of the meta stuff in this movie does land with a thud because, I don't know, maybe it's just my mood or something, but like I feel like I've never seen really a lot of people do meta as well as Kevin Williamson. And, you know, we discussed this in our episode on Freaky on Patreon recently, but I think Tragedy Girls is a really good way of doing meta that worked for me. But again, that's a movie that some people love it and some people don't love it because they don't like the meta humor in it because it doesn't work for them. So that's something with this subgenre of like slashers or horror where it's like really meta comedy that I find fascinating.
Yeah, like why does it work sometimes and why doesn't it, right?
And for specific people too, you know, like I just think it's really interesting, but there's never going to be an answer because it's all subjective, it's all for personal taste, and there's just no way to get it right.
Right. Well, I can tell you one of the other things that people specifically took issue with in this third film was that it was meta comedy about Hollywood. And if you look at the history of films that are poking fun at Hollywood, like set in the world of movie making, there actually aren't a lot of hits in that regard. Like people like to think that we want to see the glimpse behind the curtain and see how films are made. But a lot of the time, films about making movies, they're either hit or miss or they're outright bombs. So this was already going to be a tough sell to move this film to Hollywood and set it on a production stage. And I think some of the wittiness of using Woodsboro as a set, like the set piece that Sydney finds herself in her old house, there's a lot of potential there. And yet I don't think that it works. And, you know, again, we'll talk about that because there's some scripting issues there.
Yeah, no, I think that's because I think that the scene with Sydney in her quote unquote house is actually one of the more successful parts of the film. So it's interesting it doesn't work for you.
I mean, it does, but then when you hear the commentary that originally the entire climax was going to be set here as opposed to Milton's mansion, I do think that would have maybe lent it a little bit more of a stronger final.
God damn it, yeah. Okay, so I have started the commentary for this movie a lot. I feel like I always get about 20 or 30 minutes in because it's Wes Craven, it's editor Patrick Lussier, and it's producer Marianne Maddalena.
Correct.
And maybe it gets better as it goes on, but so they recorded it in 2000. They're talking. What I love is they're talking about Patrick Lussier going on to do his directorial debut, Dracula 2000, and I'm like, oof, whoops, guys.
Wish you well, Patrick. Bye.
It's not super candid, like. It's very much like, not self-congratulatory, but it's just a very generic commentary where they're like, oh yeah, we had this, we did this. Yeah. Like, no one sounds really excited.
There's not as many insights into it as you would have liked. It's also very funny because it feels like Wes Craven continually forgets things, and then he just kicks it to the other two whenever he's like, right, what's that actress's name?
But, okay, I get that, but I also think that because of like how many different versions of things they shot, like, I believe that he would have forgotten. Like,
oh, yeah. Like, folks, if you don't know the backstory of this, like, it's really easy to go into Scream 3 and think, okay, well, they had 2 fucking years to work on this script and get it to where they wanted it to go. And that is not what happened. Like, all of the issues that people have with the way this story is told, the characters, it all comes down to the fact that there was no script when they were shooting this.
Yeah. So, okay, that's a good segue. Thank you for that. Let's go into this. So, okay, I've got lots of information on this, y'all. So we're just gonna go and let's tell a story.
Okay.
So Williamson's involvement, Kevin Williamson, the writer of the first 2 films, he had been contracted while selling his Scream script, to which he had attached 2 5-page outlines for potential sequels, which would become Scream 2 and 3. This was to help entice buyers to buy his script for Scream / Scary Movie at the time, which worked out in his favor. And Craven was also contracted for 2 potential sequels following a successful test screening of Scream. And he did return to direct the 3rd installment, but as you mentioned, Joe, this was very much a John Carpenter doing the remake of Village of the Damned because he was promised that he could do a remake of Creature from the Black Lagoon deal, where he said, yeah, I'll do Scream 3, but let me make this Meryl Streep violin movie called Music of the Heart.
Yeah.
Have you seen that movie, by the way?
I have not. I feel like I only know of it in conjunction with this film.
I actually think it's really cute. It's probably a 3-star film. Like, it's not amazing. It's not terrible. It's like Sister Act, but with a white lady instead of a black nun, and like she teaches kids music.
Oh my god. Sorry, I just thought of like a blaxploitation where it's like a black nun and a white music teacher.
A black lounge singer posing as a nun. It's just Meryl
Right.
Streep being an actual teacher.
Right, okay.
Okay. Immediately, this is where my eyebrows raised. So Bob and Harvey Weinstein approached Kevin Williamson in early 1999 to pursue a full script for Scream 3. Why that late? So, we talked about in Scream 2 last year. Scream comes out in December 96. It becomes, like, by February of that year, they had greenlit a sequel, and they were filming it, like, end of spring, early summer.
Right.
Scream 2 comes out December 97. What takes them over a year to start thinking about Scream 3?
Considering that the grosses are almost identical and Scream 2 started bigger, so clearly there was like that upfront demand that immediately when you see those numbers, you say, where's my third entry? I needed it yesterday.
So I have the numbers there. So Scream opened with 6 million, but as we discussed, it was one that like started small and then just kind of built and built and built with word of mouth, eventually grossing 103 million domestically. Scream 2 opens with $32 million and goes on to gross $101 million. So
yeah.
Like, that's a fucking hit. Granted, and I'll move into Scream 3's box office later, but I'm just perplexed. Like, maybe it was schedules colliding. Maybe it was Craven saying, hey, Scream 2 was really stressful to film, and the script leaks were nuts, so I really don't want to do this right now.
Mm-hmm. Don't forget, too, that Kevin Williamson had also blown up at this point, so he was struggling to do Dawson's Creek. He was working on The Faculty. He was also preparing for his directorial feature, Killing Mrs. Tingle, which became Teaching Mrs. Tingle.
Also because of Columbine.
Yes. Oh, the Columbine of it all.
Yeah, but actually, no, that's perfect. Yeah, so following I Know What You Did Last Summer, he also did a short-lived TV series called Wasteland. We have Teaching Mrs. Tingle. I think that was also a thing, because Teaching Mrs. Tingle / Killing Mrs. Tingle had languished in development hell. And I think after Scream 1 and 2 were such huge hits, that was like Kevin Williamson saying, hey, it's my turn now.
I also want to make music of the heart, except that mine is called Killing Mrs. Tingle. It also stars Meryl Streep now. Ooh, actually, can you imagine though?
Oh my god, that'd be so... But it's Helen Mirren though, right? Like, that's...
Yeah, but she is phoning it in.
I enjoy Teaching Mrs. Tingle. I don't... It is missing the bite that it needs. Like, it needs a darker edge.
It needs that fucking R rating and blood, yeah.
Yes. That being said, I do find it entertaining. I think the ending is really fun. The girl who plays the best friend, who's the actress, is really fun. And I don't think Mirren is phoning it in. I think Mirren's really good in it.
Maybe I just don't remember it all that well. But I remember thinking like, oh my god, this is Helen Mirren. What is she doing slumming in this Kevin Williamson film? Maybe it was just that I wanted more. Actually, you know what? Yeah, I'm mentally processing this as I speak. She and Katie Holmes sparring is good. Barry Watson is the weak link.
Barry Watson, yeah. He the only thing I've seen Barry Watson in that I liked was the Christina Applegate show Samantha Who, where she lost her memory.
Oh God, right?
Because he's but he's also the weakest part of that show. Like he's so boring.
Oh, he's so boring. You can tell he got everything based on looks.
100%.
Oh, which is also not at all in keeping with this movie.
That's okay. So yeah, basically though, like when they approach Williamson in early 99 to do this, like Williamson's like, guys, I cannot. And also I think Dawson's Creek is still on this time too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So unable to develop a full script for production, Williamson instead wrote a 20 to 30 page draft outline for the film. So he expanded his 5-page outline to like something that's like, hey y'all, here's something here, like get someone else to like flesh it out.
Right.
It was going to involve the return of Ghostface to Woodsboro, and that was going to be that. So the Weinsteins hired, and this is actually of note, so it's Aaron Kruger, who at the time was only really known for writing a thriller with Tim Robbins. I don't know who the other guy in it is, but it's called Arlington Road, but Joan Cusack's in it, and she's great.
Right.
Which is an interesting choice, because Arlington Road, which I do like quite a bit, it's really dark, too. But it's not like, I don't know how you would watch Arlington Road and be like, oh yeah, this guy can do what Kevin Williamson did in Scream. Like, they're two very different movies.
Right.
Nevertheless, they hire Aaron Kruger to replace Williamson. And Joe, do you have on hand the list of films that Kruger has written since Scream 3?
I sure do. I've kept it up all day because every once in a while I just open it and kind of gently hiss at it. So Arlington Road, then Scream 3. There's a movie in between, but who could care? Followed by Reindeer Games, which is that Ben Affleck, Charlize Theron film, which is it's got its own development issues. Imposter, which is a Gary Sinise sci-fi film, and then The Ring. The Ring is the only legitimately good film on Aaron Kruger's filmography.
And I know you haven't seen Arlington Road, so I would still recommend that, but I agree with you. But again, are we going to say it's because it's a remake and he already had like the whole script basically ready for him?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. I mean, I would say that of all of the American J-horror remakes, The Ring is by far the best. So I'm willing to give him a little credit because we have seen some of those other ones really crash and burn.
I know, I agree. But I mean, like, I don't think, like, The Ring does make some updates, like, from the original. But honestly, I feel like most of them are because of Verbinski. Like, a lot of it's style for me.
That is fair. Yeah.
There isn't a ton of, like, on the written page. There's not a ton that's different. But, you know, we talk about the differences between the J-horror remakes and, like, how there's, like, a cultural divide there. And I do think that at least Kruger adapts it for America really, really well. Compared to, you know, The Grudge, where it's like, okay, we got to bring this white lady to Japan.
Well, like Dark Water.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Okay, so he also did The Ring 2. Woof.
Ugh.
The Skeleton Key, which I actually kind of like, but people are going to quibble with whether or not that's actually good.
You know what, though? I've seen a lot of people really, really, like, push The Skeleton Key lately. I do like it. That ending is a ballsy as fuck ending for a studio horror film.
Correct, yeah. And that's actually one of the reasons why I like it.
No,
it's
I
willing
agree.
to take those risks. The Brothers Grimm, a bunch of Transformers movies, that Ghost in the Shell movie.
So another, like, Asian film adaptation.
Yes. Yeah, and then he did Dumbo, the Tim Burton one, and he's doing Top Gun Maverick, which is supposed to come out later this year.
Ugh, I hate Top Gun so much. I think it's one of the most boring movies I've ever seen in my life, but that is not a popular opinion, so I will move on.
Well, it's also Tom Cruise does big dick moves for like an hour and a half, but gay as fuck, so...
I hate it so much. So, okay, to help in developing the script, Kruger did read copies of Williamson's scripts for Scream and Scream 2. And I love this too, he watched the earlier films to better understand the characters and tone, which that sentence to me implies that he had not seen Scream 1 or 2.
So you got the job, and then you did your homework. Well done. Congratulations.
Yeah, which is great. But apparently, in an interview, like, since production, Kruger admitted that his lack of involvement with the development of the principal cast of Scream hampered his ability to portray them true to their previous characterization.
Right.
Early scripts for Scream 3 had Sidney Prescott being, like, apparently, like, a very, like, Linda Hamilton and Terminator 2, which I'm just like, well, who wrote that? Because did they just quote Mickey from Scream 2?
Right. Got a real Linda Hamilton vibe going on, don't you?
Exactly. But apparently when Craven would read this and he would intervene, and so he would correct the script to bring the characters closer to their previous appearances.
See, this is what we're getting back to with Scream 2. Remember how we talked about, is it Williamson or is it Craven or is it both? And really, you can feel Craven's hand guiding so much of this franchise, and I think it's one of the reasons why it's been consistently good throughout the 4 iterations.
No, absolutely. And so Kruger says, he's even said, like, even though Craven doesn't have a writing credit on this film, like, he played a huge part in writing this film. And as we'll discuss in a minute, there wasn't always a script on hand ready to go.
I shudder. I cannot think about making a $40 million movie and being like, here are the pages for today. I just wrote them.
Yep. Oh, actually, that's where we are now. So
I'm feeding you lines, kid.
Like Scream 2, the script for Scream 3 was subject to repeated alterations, with pages sometimes completed only on the day on which they were to be filmed. That is what happens in the movie, too. So I'm just like, Kruger's just sitting there, like, really pissed off. Like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm writing more pages. Let me write about this in the movie.
Yeah, particularly the Jenny McCarthy line where she's actively talking about, has there been another goddamn right? Apparently they were filming that, and members of the crew were being like, really? Like, pointing at them, being like, you fuckers, really?
So yeah, multiple scenes were rewritten to include previously absent characters or change elements of the plot when it was decided they were not connecting with other scenes. Apparently in one of the original scripts, in Williamson's original like 30-page draft thing, he had it to where the killers would have been part of a stab fan club in Woodsboro, and all the members of the club would have been involved in the killings, and the final twist of the movie was when Sidney walks into a house after Ghostface had killed everyone, and they all rose up, none of them were really dead, they planned the whole thing, blah, 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 blah. That was eventually used in Kevin Williamson's TV show The Following with Kevin Bacon, which is a hot piece of garbage.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you can also see a little bit of the genesis of Scream 4 in there as well, right?
You can, but also it seems like April Fool's Day, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's immediately what comes to my mind when I see that. I'm like, okay, so Williamson just ripped off April Fool's Day.
Right. Previous episode that a bunch of you bitches didn't listen to, so go back and listen to it.
I know, and it's a really good movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I've gone ahead too far because we're already in production.
Okay.
Shortly before production. So production on this film begins in July 1999. In April 1999, that's when Columbine happens. So we've got most of a script written, and then this happens. The world is really, at least this country, is really torn asunder. Scream itself had already kind of been part of this whole, like, oh, it's inspiring killers, blah, 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 like violence in the media. Video games are coming under scrutiny. Horror itself was coming under scrutiny. It really was a lot. And basically, people were looking for reasoning into the actions of Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, the Columbine killers. And basically, with Scream 3 not yet underway, because it hadn't started filming yet, there were considerations about whether the film should be made at all. Well, I don't think the Weinsteins considered canceling this film.
No, of course not. They said, I'm sorry, money bucks in the vault there. Yeah, we're going to go ahead with this movie.
Well, yeah, so aware of the potential for negative attention, the studio, meaning the Weinsteins, decided to press forward, albeit with changes. So, first of all, the setting of the film was changed from Woodsboro to Hollywood, upon which Kruger commented that he believed the characters should be moving to bigger places from high school to college to Hollywood anyway.
Right.
But behind the scenes, the move away from Woodsboro was mandated as it was considered that a film containing violent acts of murder in and around the small town of Woodsboro and the associated school would attract significant negative criticism and attention that could be detrimental to the production and studio, since the film would have been released less than a year after Columbine happened.
Yeah, and this was happening across Hollywood. So basically anything to do with teenagers, they were trying to remove any kind of violence. A lot of people will remember the controversy even around The Matrix because there were these accusations, that it was just promoting gun violence, which is, I mean, frankly, hilarious to somebody who doesn't live in the U.S. because you folks love your guns.
Well, I mean, I'm even looking at like post 9/11 when any movie involving a plane was like pulled. Like, the Gwyneth Paltrow, Mike Myers, Christina Applegate comedy View from the Top was postponed over a year because of 9/11.
Yeah. But thinking back to, I think we've mentioned this before, but even like the Buffy episode Earshot and its season 3 finale, Graduation Part 2, were both delayed very long times.
I didn't watch Buffy when it aired except for the final season, but my husband always tells me, because we rewatched Graduation Day, the season 3 finale, and he was like, oh, it was a pain in the ass because they didn't air Earshot, and then they aired the Graduation Day Part 1.
Yeah.
But they didn't air Part 2 until after the summer because again, Columbine's in April, Buffy's ending in May, so it's a month later. And so
it was very soon. It's just one of those things where if you can watch an adult protagonist turn into a giant snake and then them blow up a school and equate that to teenage gun violence, like you're really, you know what? You're reaching with that. It's sensitivity. I appreciate that. But this idea that we need to... Actually, you know what? Let's not go into it because we've got so much other stuff. If people want to hear our thoughts, we do have a Patreon episode about censorship and scapegoating.
I'm of two minds. I won't harp on it too much. But yeah, I mean, I get why these things happen. I don't really like this whole, like, changing media to, like, for sensitivity. I mean, whatever. Sorry. You're right. Too long.
Okay.
Also, another change. In a 2009 interview, Matthew Lillard, who was Stu in Scream, he said he had been contracted to reprise his role in Scream 3 as the primary antagonist, having survived his apparent death, orchestrating new Ghostface attacks from prison on high school students, and ultimately targeting Sydney, which, again, that's a lot of The Following as well.
100%, yeah.
But again, they changed that because they didn't want to have a high school setting of teens committing murder.
Right. And also, so weird that they, at one point, considered bringing both Randy and Stu for this film. It's like, no, just let them be dead.
Yeah, I am 100% against Randy coming back, and we will talk about more of that when we get to his scene in this film.
Quote-unquote scene, yeah.
I don't know if I mind Stu. If there was a line in 2 about it,
right,
like about him surviving and being in prison, I think I would be more forgiving. But because there's like, as of 2, like, they are dead. Right. Although, really, they never really say Stu is dead, right? Like, we get the I fucking killed him for Billy Loomis, but we don't get that for Stu.
This is true. Yeah, they could have just included an insert of Nancy O'Dell being like, and Stu Macher from prison said he thought the new Stab movie was fantastic.
I love that. So yeah, those are some issues with that. But here's the other thing, too. So, of course, with those changes, there was also issues with the violence in the film in general. The studio remained much more apprehensive concerning violence and gore in Scream 3 than with previous installments, pressing a greater emphasis on the series' satiric humor while scaling back on the violence.
Right. Is this where they started to have conversations about whether they should even show blood?
That is correct. So at one point in production, the studio went as far as to demand that the film feature no blood on screen, no blood or on-screen violence at all.
God, can you imagine?
Oh, well, Craven intervened, and he was like, y'all, we can make a Scream movie or we can make not a Scream movie. Right. But if you don't let me have violence in this movie, it will not be Scream. Mm-hmm. Also, to compare, Scream 3 does use the least amount of artificial blood in the first 3 films. It uses 10 gallons of blood compared with the 50 gallons for Scream 1 and the 30 gallons for Scream 2. Mm-hmm. Okay, now there's another issue with this film. So the studio had learned a lot from the script leaks that leaked all over the quote-unquote internet for Scream 2. So, the production team purposefully on Scream 3 filmed large amounts of footage containing different variations of each scene based on the different script developments in order that, should the script further change, they would ideally have a scene they could use without having to film new ones at a later date.
Oh my god, this is not how you make movies.
This required them to obtain access to locations or build sets, and we'll get into this with Cottonseam, but they had to, they had the apartment, but then they left and they had to go back and do reshoots and they couldn't get into the apartment again. So they had to build a set of the apartment to refilm this opening scene twice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you've got that Blu-ray, you can go and see both of these alternate versions. And it's weird because they look almost identical, but at the same time, you're like, really? You cared this much about the aesthetic that you wouldn't just be like, meh, scrap it. Just film a new opening.
I have thoughts about these openings too, because I actually prefer either of the alternate ones to the one we get, except for one particular thing.
Yeah, we'll get to that opening. There's a lot to chat.
Yeah. So the script underwent changes repeatedly as filming was conducted, with pages regularly only available on the day of filming. Additionally, if the production decided to change a scene, this sometimes meant refilming other scenes that had already been filmed to maintain continuity, requiring further rewrites.
Oh my god. Just what? What are you doing, people?
So much bullshit. Because again, this is 1999. They're filming Scream 2 in 1997. It's early internet. The script leaks are a new thing, so they're kind of working on the fly. Mm-hmm. You almost wish that they would have just done 3 right away before it had even evolved further. And I get it, I get the fears because people were fucking apeshit about these films, rightfully so.
Yeah, but I just think it's so funny that what we end up with is a compromised film that maybe has a shocking reveal ending, but at the same time, you only get to experience that ending for the first time once, and then you have to rewatch this frankly hodgepodge, very messy film for eternity. It's like, folks, you're so short-sighted on keeping the identity of the killer secret. Come on.
Okay. Brief aside, though. Do you remember the most surprise you were ever at a killer reveal in these films?
It was 100% Miss Loomis.
Okay. For me, it's either Miss Loomis or Jill Roberts. I don't know which one gave me more of a... I think had I seen 2 later and appreciated it, because I think when I saw 2, I was very much like, oh, it's that lady? Or I was like, who's that lady? Because I didn't watch Roseanne at the time, so I didn't know to pay attention to Debbie Salt. Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, whenever Jill Roberts, sorry y'all, spoilers for Scream 4, whenever Emma Roberts takes off that mask, I was just very much like,
For sure, for that character, not so much for the Rory Culkin character.
No, yeah, Rory Culkin was, yeah. But I think maybe that's why the Jill Roberts thing works for me, is because the Rory Culkin reveal is so much like a...
Yeah, it's very underwhelming.
Yeah.
But you know what? We'll talk about that next year.
For sure. Anyway, okay, so... There also was another issue, too. So, Craven had stated that convincing the central cast to return to film Scream 2 wasn't that difficult. Courtney Cox is the most famous here, but a lot of people are on TV, but it wasn't a huge deal. They can come back.
Right.
Unfortunately, their burgeoning fame and busy schedules made arranging their availability with Scream 3's production period very difficult.
Right.
The big one, though, is Neve Campbell. So, Neve Campbell's commitments in particular, she's filming Party of Five.
Mm-hmm.
She's filming Drowning Mona during the filming of Scream 3. And Joe, you were surprised by this too, but Neve Campbell is wearing a wig throughout the entirety of Scream 3.
Yeah, I'm a little embarrassed. When you know to look for it, you can very clearly see it. But I remember thinking at the time, oh yeah, the hair just looks a little shaggy in the back. But apparently that's to cover the Drowning Mona extensions.
The funny thing to me is, though, it would have made more sense for her to have her hair be her hair in Scream 3 and then give her a wig for Drowning Mona, because her character in Drowning Mona, she's not white trash, but she's like in a town of white trash, and it's these extensions with highlights and stuff. Like, you can give her a bad wig in Drowning Mona.
Right, yeah. The idea that it took her 2 hours a day to put on this random Scream 3 know-nothing wig, like, I feel bad for this actress, even though she only had 20 days of production.
Well, yeah, so that's the other thing. So because of all of her other commitments, she had 20 days, so just under 3 weeks to film this movie. And the filming for this movie was July 6th through September 29th.
Not short.
Yeah, I mean, she basically was available for 3 of the 8 weeks of filming, and she is ostensibly the protagonist of this franchise.
Right, but not in this film.
Not in this film. Which is why, though, like, when writing the script, they put more focus on Dewey and Gale, and Sydney's kind of, like, there.
Yeah.
At her house. But I will say she arrives at the police station, like, a lot sooner than because it's, like, the 50-minute mark. A lot sooner than I remembered her coming in.
I do remember her being more involved in the climax. Like, when we get to the point where Milton's party begins, I was like, okay, well, Sydney's going to show up soon. And she doesn't. Like, she's really absent for the entire first part of the last act.
But you'll also notice that even when she's in the police station, a lot of her scenes are her by herself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the issue there, too. They had her for 20 days, like, cool, let's film all your alone shit.
Yeah, basically, we built this police station, you're just going to sit in this office and deliver a lot of lines, and Patrick Dempsey will come through with his, like, beautiful hair.
Mm-hmm. Actually, I'm sorry, and I misspoke earlier. I said 8 weeks. It is very much a 12-week shooting schedule, so she was filming for a fourth of this film's shooting schedule.
There we go, yeah.
So yeah, they greenlight this movie with a budget of $40 million, a significant increase over the $15 million budget of Scream and the $24 million budget of Scream 2. I would also like to point out that the $40 million budget of Scream 3 matches the $40 million budget of Scream 4, but because of inflation 11 years later, technically, Scream 3 is the most expensive film in this franchise.
You're so persnickety about that. I love it.
It makes me so mad, and I'll talk about it more whenever we cover Scream 4, but I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, Scream 3 opens February 4th, 2000, and it opens in the number 1 spot with $34.7 million, and it stayed in the number 1 spot in its second week as well.
Which is super fucking rare for a horror film.
Well, the marketing for this was very much like, oh, it's a trilogy, it's the final chapter of a trilogy, everything's gonna come to a head. And one thing I actually do really like, that if you haven't seen the trailer for this movie, it's very much a teaser trailer, where it's like, Chapter 1 sets the rules, we're watching, like, clips of Scream 1. Chapter 2 bends the rules, and we're watching clips of Scream 2. And then it's like, but in the finale...
It's like all bets are off or something?
Something like that, I don't fucking know. But it's, again, a lot of clips. You don't even know the plot of this movie based on the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Which I really honestly appreciate. It does make me think that they released that trailer before they knew what the movie was.
We haven't even shot anything for this movie, but we know that it's coming to theaters on this day.
It goes on to make $89.1 million domestically and $72.7 million internationally for a worldwide total of $161.8 million. It is about $13 million below what Scream 1 and 2 made domestically and about $10 million below what they made internationally. So it's a downturn, but, like, for the reputation that Scream 3 has, it's honestly not as bad as you would expect.
No, it's not the failure that people like to assign. But when the box office numbers failed to hit 100 million, that was like, okay, we will not talk about a fourth entry. This is now a trilogy. For sure, we're not going to think about doing future iterations.
I mean, maybe if they would have spent $40 million in 2000 money on it, because $40 million in 2000 money is about $60 million today.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. But I mean, they also had to pay these stars a lot more because you can't give them the paltry pennies that they were giving for Scream 1. Like, they knew what they were worth at this point.
So, Neve Campbell and Jamie Lee Curtis had that Variety, like, web chat last year. And Neve Campbell had said, like, oh, she had her, her fee for Scream 1 and 2. And it wasn't until Scream 3 that she was able to get, like, a cut of something else.
Right, which is where the money is.
Yes, but she very much alluded to the fact that the Weinsteins fucked her out of that too.
I'm shocked.
But this is the first time she was able to say, like, oh, hey, give me a cut. I'm literally the head of your franchise. And
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
The reception for this film was not great even at the time. Like, this isn't one where it came out and people were like, oh, it's good, and now we hate it. No. The first two movies were critically acclaimed movies. The second one has the best reviews of the franchise. We're looking at a 39% on Rotten Tomatoes for this, with a 5.2 out of 10 average score, and a Letterboxd score of 5.4 out of 10.
Yeah.
I mean, what else can you say?
It's halfway there.
Honestly, yeah. I think I gave this a 3 out of 5 because I felt like I wanted to be generous, but this really probably is a 2.5 for me.
Yeah, it toggles between 2.5 and 3 for me.
Yeah, and like we're both massive fans of this franchise, and it just is what it is.
Yeah. Do you want to walk through it?
Yeah, let's go there. We spent 45 minutes on this troubled production.
Well, the films under the Weinsteins often require lengthier production sections, as we've discovered.
See our episode on Cursed, Scream 2,
Mm-hmm.
probably some others.
Yeah.
Oh, we should do Mimic one day.
Ooh. I haven't seen that in ages, so I'd be up for
I really like Mimic.
that. I like Mira Sorvino. I like Del Toro.
Yeah, there you go. Josh Brolin.
Yeah, sure.
He's barely he dies really fast. But
Okay,
cool.
All right, so Scream 3. Obviously, people who know Scream know that the opening kill is a big thing, right? So there was a lot of speculation about who they were going to murder. And I remember going into the theater, there was a lot of concern and hand-wringing that they were going to kill one of the original 3 in this opening.
And the funny thing is that they never were. Like, that was never
It was never
in
on the
consideration.
table. No.
I do have, and you may have this too, but the original opening was going to be a character named Ben Damon, who was an actor in Stab 2, who is now going to be the lead in Stab 3.
Oh my god, that name. Just warning signs right there.
Well, okay, no. I'm sorry. You mentioned like how Hollywood satire movies like don't really do that well. I think the most successful one that I've ever seen is actually Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. But rewatching it last year, it does not hold up nearly as well as it did in 2000 for me.
Right. I think most people would probably look at Robert Altman's The Player as the kind of go-to, but even that is a satire as opposed to like a straight-up comedy.
Yeah.
It's also clearly meant for like adults. So this idea that you're going to make a slasher film set in Hollywood with beautiful 20-something people, it's a departure from what they would normally do.
That's the thing. This film teeters, it's trying to be satirical. It borders on parody for me.
Yeah.
Everything is so on the nose and thus not quite funny.
Like you mentioned, the Jay and Silent Bob cameo, I groaned in the theater in 2000.
You know, I know people always hate that. I don't like it. I don't quite find it as terrible as everyone else does, but it's very much like why is this in my Scream movie?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's because it's like, oh, well, who are recognizable people that this demographic will go, oh, hey, I know those dudes.
Actually,
it was filming at the same time, wasn't it?
Well, I was trying to see. So, this comes out February of 2000. Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back comes out in August of 2001. I wonder if they were like, hey, y'all, we're making this Jay and Silent Bob movie, so let's put them in Scream 3, which we know is going to make a lot of money to boost awareness of their brand.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we have heard stranger things, so that would not surprise at all.
100%.
Okay, so in fact, obviously, as we all know, the actual opening kill is Cotton Weary.
Weakest of the franchise, right?
Absolutely. It honestly feels like they didn't really even try with this one. And I don't mean like, oh, they phoned it in, like it's not very good. It's just that it doesn't seem like they were trying to top 1 or 2 with this. They just thought, okay, we'll kill someone recognizable. So they thought, okay, well, Cotton is expendable.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, right? So, okay, like all of these films, the first one you have Drew Barrymore and it's fucking terrifying. The second one you have this kind of meta movie theater experience. The fourth one you have like the movie within a movie within a movie, which is really fun.
Yeah, that one feels like they're actually overcompensating. Like, we know 3 sucked. We're going to really go all out with this one.
100%. Because if you actually, like, I love the opening of Scream 4, but when you watch it, it's kind of like, that doesn't really make a lot of sense.
No.
But this one is honestly kind of the only thing I like about this scene is the very end when the killer goes, "It was only a simple game, Cotton. Now you lose," and we get the knife down cue title card.
Oh my god, it sounds like a Jigsaw line when you say it, though.
It does, and also Roger Jackson's voice doesn't sound the same in that line. It sounds like a bad dub.
Right.
That being said, there are 2 alternate cuts of this scene, and I actually, pre-Cotton's death, I prefer all of it to what we actually got.
They're actually in reverse order when you watch them on the Blu-ray, but the first one that they shot is basically him running into the original West Hollywood location that they shot. So it's not a set, it's actually an apartment building. He has to unlock the door, he goes in, it's him by himself the entire time. He's looking for his girlfriend, Christine, who in the final cut will be played by Kelly Rutherford.
Who at the time was known for Melrose Place, but most people may know her now for being, oh god, is it Serena's mom in Gossip Girl?
Correct.
Yeah, Serena's mom in Gossip Girl.
Yeah, but in this original cut, no Kelly Rutherford at all. It's actually just Cotton. He's looking through the house. He's finding open doors. The shower's on. But he's actually talking to his girlfriend, like she's planning to meet him down the street. Yeah. And then eventually that gets revealed. He's directed to open a closet door and Christine's body falls out. She's already dead. He's been talking to the killer the whole time. And then Ghostface just comes in and kills him.
So I think the broom closet reveal is really fun.
Yeah.
Well, we do know the voice changer's weird because, again, like in the same scene, actually, wait. In this one, does he talk to the killer on the phone posing as a sexy woman?
Presumably, yes, because in all of these iterations, he's driving, he gets a call from a woman, and then it's revealed that it's Ghostface, and Ghostface is trying to get at his girlfriend in their apartment.
Got it.
Yeah, I think the issue that they had with this was that you didn't care about the dead girlfriend and that it was just too much Cotton Weary. So when they reshoot the second version of it, you actually get Kelly Rutherford in this. They didn't have that West Hollywood location, so they actually had to rebuild. So they're cutting back and forth between some of the original stuff and some of the new stuff. And in this new version, the confrontation happens in this office space, but it has a skylight. And at one point, the killer gets trapped under a bookcase and Cotton, for no good reason, climbs up through the skylight and then he gets stabbed, he falls back down, and then he dies.
Okay, but I actually really like this too because he's basically like dangling off this skylight and the killer stabs him in the leg and uses really the knife to pull him down. Like, I think it's really cool. What ruins both of these scenes for me is... basically, like he's about to get stabbed and the killer's like says something. It's not the same line.
Right.
And Cotton goes, "But I'm in the sequel." And the killer goes, "Aren't we all?" And then stabs him. It is the stupidest thing.
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of clunkers in the finished script, but this one in particular would have been the opening kill ending with a thud.
Okay, so I have a question for you. Why does the killer think that Cotton would know where Sydney is?
Just a relationship with Sydney. I guess at this point we're meant to assume anyone who has ties to Sydney could potentially be victim.
And so he's just going to kill everyone. So he starts with Cotton.
I mean, start at the bottom, right?
I guess.
Or maybe it's just that Cotton was the easiest to get to because he's already in Los Angeles. Nope, even as I'm saying that, it doesn't make sense because Dewey's also there. Stop 3 is in production.
Well, and we already know that the killer has gone through ransacked the file cabinet. Also, it's Roman, so he must know that Dewey is working on the film.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you start to poke holes in the narrative logic of this movie, everything really starts to fall apart.
I will say, though, that this film does share something in common with 2. You know, 2 drops the copycat storyline really quickly. This film drops the killer is killing people in the order they die in the script very quickly, as soon as it's mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. Which I find a little bit more palatable in this film than I did in the second one, because I think I was interested in that in the second one. Whereas here you're like, oh, there's a million different scripts and it could be anybody. So you're like, all right, that's fine.
But the problem is, again, just like in Scream 2, which is a flaw that I will admit, as soon as Patrick Dempsey says we don't know which one the killer read, there is no mention of this ever again.
Ever again. No. It's I guess we're all potential victims. Okay, let's live our lives in fear.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So there are 2 things that I want to shout out about this. One is that this opening sequence, I don't love it. I actually do think it's just kind of a meh opening, but it does have a lot of earmarks back to the original film. And that's one of the things where I don't know that Aaron Kruger did a great job with this script, but he does try to make a bunch of callbacks to one so that it feels like this final entry in the trilogy is speaking back to its origin.
Interesting. I've actually never noticed callbacks to one in this scene. So do you have a couple?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So for me, part of it is this idea that we've got this blonde woman getting into the shower in the opening scene.
But see, okay, that to me is calling out the Heather Graham replica in Scream 2.
Well, yeah, it's not just one that's doing
Okay.
it. Like, there's a couple of different instances. But, like, whenever Kelly Rutherford gets out of the shower, I immediately go to Jada's line, why she gotta be butt-ass naked?
I mean, a lot of the critiques of 3 are like, this movie has become what the first 2 films were satirizing.
Right. Yeah, it's a joke on itself.
I find it funny that they decide to replicate the satirical scene in Scream 2 that is satirizing not in the film, but like Craig Williamson, satirizing Drew Barrymore's scene in Scream 1. Like, I think it's such a weird choice, right?
I don't disagree, but I do feel like they don't think that they're making that joke. I think they're paying homage to the roots.
They're wrong.
Everything with Cotton's phone conversation Hollywood chase scene,
right,
which I also don't love, is very Drew Barrymore getting quizzed by Ghostface in the first film.
Yeah, I just wish... I do like Cotton, I like Liev Schreiber. I honestly don't like Kelly Rutherford in this movie. I don't need her walking around like...
Oh, no. I mean, she's a nothing character. I feel like we wouldn't even talk about her if she hadn't gone on to be something bigger in other things.
No, I remember, though, when I watched this on VHS in 2003, my dad was like, oh, Trace, it's Kelly Rutherford from Melrose Place, as if I should know who that is.
Right. If you watch Melrose, you would recognize her.
Yeah.
Although, even on that, I would argue she wasn't, a great character.
Courtney Thorne-Smith and Marsha Cross, man.
Right. Yeah. So the other big thing that I like about this, and it's a brief aside, and then we can move on. I love the line where she says, I don't like your stab games. Because I think that cues us that they have a role-play sex life. And I just love imagining Cotton being like, ooh, I'm the scary killer who killed Maureen Prescott. I'm sneaking into your house to take off your panties.
I also, again, Roman is a movie director. Oh, I guess maybe that's why he went after Cotton, right? Like, Roman is in Hollywood. He knows Cotton. He's going for it.
Well, don't forget Cotton's also working on the movie, because he's in Stab 3.
Right. Oh, yeah. But I'm in the sequel. It's so bad.
You lose.
But there is that line, though, where he's like, I'm talking about how much fun it's going to be to rip your insides out. Like, that does seem like a callback to 1, so that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's our opening, and then we get our title card, and we open with Sid, and she is living like the fucking Unabomber in seclusion with her dog, Cherokee.
I will say, I do really like a lot of Sydney stuff. I think the Sydney stuff really raises this movie a bit.
Well, it's the emotional core of the film, right?
It is. And, I've seen a lot of people that, don't even like Scream 3 that are like, I wish Scream 4 didn't exist because Scream 3 has the perfect ending for the franchise.
For her, yeah.
For
100%.
her. Yes. And we'll talk about that when we get there. But I understand that sentiment. I do understand that sentiment.
Yeah, one of the issues that you could make with this film is that it doesn't have enough Sydney, and as a result, it doesn't have enough of that kind of heart or almost like a grounding figure. Like, as much as we like Gail and Dewey, they've never been the linchpin around which everything circles. And it, I think, makes the ending harder to land because you're supposed to suddenly be like, oh my god, there's this other person who was meant to be a part of Sydney's story, but also Sydney hasn't been here for very much of the film, and also she's never met this character before.
I will say, and this is the one thing I'll say about Scream 5, everyone prepare yourselves for maybe reduced roles for our central trio. Not because they're going to die, but because I don't think they're going to be the focus of this film.
It's entirely possible.
But by design, whereas with this, it's like, Neve Campbell's not available.
Right, yeah. I'm sorry, Neve Campbell's not available right now. She's not taking your calls.
Yeah, exactly.
But speaking of, so she is working remotely at a crisis counseling organization. I know that Jen Adams from Psychoanalysis Pod, they did an entire episode about Sydney's arc throughout the 3 films and what it means. I mean, I think that this film, particularly Scream 3, is very much centered around the historical legacy of trauma and what it does to generations. And there's something nice about Sydney's journey towards finding acceptance and a kind of peace in this film. But I like the idea that she's also helping other women when we meet her.
It's interesting too, right? Because we talked about Halloween 2018 and how it handles trauma a lot because of what it does to the Laurie Strode character. And there are some people, both of us included, who are like, oh, Halloween H2O actually like handles her trauma better. Y'all should go listen to our audio commentary on Halloween H2O if you're a patron.
There we go.
But this film, actually, Scream 3 and 2 for that matter, and 4 now, should be looked at similarly. Again, like I've already said, this film handles Sid's arc really, really well, and I really like it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't disagree with the people who think this is a perfect 3... I almost said episode. This is a perfect 3-film arc for this character.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so that's our introduction to Sid. She's doing okay, but obviously she's very much out off the grid. People don't know who she is. She's going under an assumed name of Laura and so on. So let's touch base with Gail. Gail is delivering... I think it's just because we just watched Copycat, but I was like, is Gail doing the Sigourney Weaver bit from Copycat?
I thought the same fucking... Oh my god, Joe.
Like she's delivering a talk about serial killers to a packed auditorium at UCLA. I was like, paging Dr. Weaver, all we needed to do is put her in a red fucking dress.
No, this is Helen Hudson hardcore.
Yeah.
But like way cuntier. I'm sorry, way bitchier. It's so funny, but it gets so on the nose, and this guy's like, so you're saying we should go out and like slit each other's throats? Metaphorically, yeah. Okay. I just like, I mean, again, I love Gail Weathers. I love this. It's just kind of like, ugh, okay.
Well, part of this too is, well, I do think that this film does a very good job with Sydney. I don't love what it's done to Gail. She's not the brittle kind of hard woman that she was in 2, where she was all exterior and, you know, kind of soft on the inside. Mm-hmm. Here it really does feel like she's that kind of cutthroat bitch. And part of this is that you hear she had this great opportunity on 60 Minutes too, which this film thinks that that's a hilarious joke.
It's not, yeah, it's not. But I think, again, we leave... Scream 2 ends with Gail giving up a report to go check on Dewey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I do buy this trajectory for the character, but...
I do too.
It's all given via, like, exposition with dialogue, and I'm just like... Granted, it is the same thing with 2, with how 1 ends, but we end 1 with Gail giving the report and not going to see Dewey. We end 2 with Gail giving up a report to go see Dewey, and so... I don't know. It's frustrating to me.
Yeah, I don't love it, but I do think that this film gets there in the end. And much like what we talked about with Sydney, this film does find a kind of peace and closure for Gail and Dewey and the relationship that I quite like. And I will say, if I have a complaint about 4, particularly with Gail and Dewey, it's that they really just replicate this Scream 3 storyline again.
Yeah, that's fair. It also should be pointed out this is the one Scream film where Courtney Cox is credited as Courtney Cox Arquette. Mm-hmm. They had just come back from their honeymoon like a week before production started.
Yeah, it is funny in that audio commentary for Wes Craven to continually talk about which scenes were shot first, and he's like, well, you can just tell because they just got back from the Bahamas. They're so tanned. Okay, so Gail does this talk, and then she is introduced to Detective Peter Kincaid, who is played by Patrick Dempsey. Ugh. He is waiting to tell her about Cotton's death, and also they have found their first piece of evidence, which is an old picture of Maureen Prescott, who is played by Lynn McCree, and she actually gets to do stuff in this movie.
And the headshots that the killer leaves behind are her actual headshots from being in Hollywood, apparently.
That is crazy.
I do think it's telling that the one Scream film to really actively incorporate cops. I know we get Hicks and whatever the fuck in Scream 4. And we get the FBI agents in Scream 2. But, and I guess Dewey, you could say, is a cop in Scream 1. Kind of,
yeah. I mean, he's a proper character, not just a cop.
But, like, stereotypical cops, right? Like, the one Scream film to have stereotypical cops is, like, the worst one. I hate Patrick Dempsey's character in this movie. And they also make him a pseudo-Randy where he's also really into scary movies. It's real dumb.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's because he and the Angelica character are the most obvious red herrings that this movie has.
Yeah, absolutely.
And neither one of them work for me.
No. I mean, if we had gotten the actual originally intended ending, maybe Angelina would work, and we'll talk about that later.
Right, yes. Oh, I called her Angelica, didn't I? Yeah, it's Angelina.
Angelina and Jennifer Jolie.
Oh, I get it. And I don't like it.
I mean, oh my god.
Which, can you imagine then that original draft instead of Cotton to have Ben Damon and then this character with Angelina Jolie?
But see, that is bad writing. That is bad meta. I'm glad that changed. It is stupid.
Yeah, like, this is what high school me in my screenplay wrote, was like, oh, I'm going to be super coy by just taking famous people's names and taking, like, one from the front and one from the back.
I'm surprised they didn't just call Jenny McCarthy's character, like, Angelina Aniston.
Right? Do you get it?
You get it, guys? You get
it? Okay, so Sydney briefly finds out that Cotton's been murdered, courtesy of Nancy O'Dell. Ugh. And then...
I'm sorry. That sound, you just, ugh.
It's just one of those things where it's like, whenever Nancy O'Dell shows up, you're like, oh, God. Like, she works in 2 because it's cheeky and you've got that Tori Spelling payoff, whereas here you're just like, oh, it's just Nancy O'Dell pretending to be a real reporter.
But isn't she also in 4 when she's like, Jill Roberts is a hero to our age?
God, maybe. It's been a long time since I've seen 4.
Yeah. Oh, God. I'm so excited to revisit it with you. But yeah, no. Nancy O'Dell is like one of the reporters at the end of 4. So she's in 2, 3, and 4. But I love scary movies.
See, that works too. My heart. Okay, so we've got a terrible cover of Red Right Hand as we arrive at Sunrise Studios for production on Stab 3, Return to Woodsboro.
It's a cover?
It's definitely not the one that we've heard before.
Oh, fuck. My ears did not pick that up.
It's not good.
Oof, okay.
It's not like the good original version, for sure.
Gotcha. Well, actually, because a big complaint with 4 was that it doesn't have Red Right Hand. 1 has it when the town is being shut down for curfew. Mm-hmm. 3 has it here. 2 has it in the Stab movie.
Right.
Okay, cool.
So this is where we just get the character dump, where we basically meet everybody that we're going to spend the rest of the movie with. So we are introduced on the Stab 3 set to director Roman Bridger, played by Scott Foley, studio head John Milton, who is played by Lance Henriksen. There's also a cameo by Roger Corman.
Oh.
Yeah, he's the other guy when they're talking on the porch.
Gotcha.
And then we meet the cast of Stab 3. So we've got Angelina, who is played by Emily Mortimer. And after having covered Relic last year for Patreon, it was shocking to be like, holy shit, Emily Mortimer 20 years ago. She looks like a baby.
She is not the showcase in this movie, but have you seen Match Point? The Woody Allen movie with Scarlett Johansson and I think it's Jonathan Rhys-Meyers.
Yes, you talked about it extensively on our Relic episode.
There you go.
Yeah.
She's really good in that.
Yeah.
So that's free free Patreon content for y'all. I really like Match Point.
Emily Mortimer, real good at Match Point. All right, we also meet Tyson, played by Dion Richmond, Tom, played by Matt Kieslar, and Sarah Darling, played by Jenny McCarthy.
Okay, I know we hate Jenny McCarthy because she's anti-vaxxer, and that is rightfully so.
Yes, we hate Jenny McCarthy as a person, as an actress in this film. I love her.
I do too, and honestly, apparently she was like real great to work with. I did make it that far in the commentary where Craven was just like, she was awesome. Like, she was super professional, always on time, which, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I love that he praises her because she like showed up at work on time and apparently knew her lines. And part of me was like, okay, I get that first part, but knowing her lines, you can't come down on actors for not knowing their lines when you're delivering them pages of new scripts every day, Wes Craven.
Honestly, like, I mean, it sucks, right? Because if you're watching a typical quote-unquote slasher movie, you expect Jenny McCarthy to die first, and that they do that anyway is really fucking stupid to me.
Yeah, although I will say that her sequence is one of my favorite in this film.
I agree, except for the anticlimactic end of her.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, we'll go there.
So this is where we get Gail arriving on set. She is in a lemon-colored suit this time. Looks pretty good on her,
It's very yellow.
It's very yellow. And she is immediately ambushed by her Stab doppelganger, Jennifer Jolie, played by MVP of this movie, Parker Posey.
It's 100%. The missed opportunity with this movie is that we don't get enough like Dewey Tom stuff and Angelina Sydney stuff.
Absolutely not. Go to the corner. What are you talking about? That is the missed opportunity?
No. I mean, I'm sorry. There are many others. The issue is that honestly, Emily Mortimer is not very charismatic in this movie, and Matt Kieslar is not charismatic either. So like, there's nothing there for like David Arquette.
You mean
and
like
Neve
we're
Campbell
introduced
to play off of?
Okay, yeah.
That's what I mean. Like, not as they are. They should have had something that was, again, more satirical, not going into parody. Honestly, the Parker Posey stuff borders on parody, but because Parker Posey is so good and so charming, she's a reprehensible person in this movie.
Oh, sure.
But you can't help but love her, right?
Oh,
like, it's that she makes this character work, and her scenes with Gale, which are too few, are the
Which is
best
why I
parts
got
of this
angry
film.
at you. I was like, I don't want more scenes with those other people.
No,
I want more
no,
scenes
no.
with these two. It makes sense now.
I meant to say, like, the script should have done more with the doppelganger aspect, but we just, quote-unquote, get Gale and Jennifer Jolie, which is fantastic. But imagine if we had that dynamic with all three of these.
Yeah, I wonder if they worried that it would just be too much trying to keep these people matched up with their doppelgangers. I don't know. It's undeniable that Parker Posey is... I mean, she's almost in a league of her own in this film. We've praised, rightfully so, Courtney Cox for what she does with Gale, but she's never delivered this kind of manic, bouncing off the walls, wacky physical performance. Like, Parker Posey comes into this movie and she just gives it a complete lift. Like, the movie is okay up to this point, and then Parker Posey comes in and you're like, holy shit, this movie just got good.
You feel the energy.
Yes.
There's a bit near the end whenever Angelina is getting murdered and Courtney Cox decides to run back and Parker Posey like runs after her, but she like extends her arm out.
Oh my god. The women running in this movie is quite odd because also
great.
the way that Angelina runs is very bizarre as well.
Oh, it's very much like Cindy Campbell in Scary
Yes.
Movie 2. I'm not crazy. Whoa!
Listeners, I would like you to clock how many times Trace has done that over the last 3 years.
But it's so true here.
It is very true here. I thought of you. This is what you have done to me now, Trace. I watch movies and I think of you.
We just need to cover Scary Movie 2.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we get these great, back and forth. We learn that, yes, Dewey, a.k.a. David Arquette, is a technical advisor on the film. There's a little combativeness, and then Gale gets kicked off. This is where we get our Jay and Silent Bob. I don't like the Connie Chung joke. It smacks of weird, awkward racism from the time.
I agree, but it's because of her hair, right?
Oh, I thought it was just like a reporter for reporter.
Again, we have the name Jennifer Jolie. I'm sorry things didn't work out with Brad Pitt, but being single, that's a pretty good fallback. Like, why? Why are you calling this out? Like, we already have the name. We don't need this.
Yeah, do not call attention to this. This is not one of the strong suits of this script.
Yeah, it's bad. But yes, Connie Chung is a weird joke.
Yeah, weird joke. Okay, so we hop back to Sydney. This is, again, just a little bit of character detail to know that she's still plagued by dreams about her dead mom, that her dad is apparently alive and well. We've not touched base with him at all in Scream 2, but, Lawrence Heck, who apparently is like a small-time character actor in LA, it was nice to see him, I guess.
I've never noticed this detail until the commentary pointed it out, but there is a poster for her Fall of Troy or whatever Cassandra of Troy play.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so when she walks in her first scene after the opening, she walks in and there's a picture of her and her dad, which is actually Neve Campbell and her real father, like when she's a kid. But above it is a college poster for the play that she was in Scream 2.
Aw, that's nice.
Yeah, I thought that was a really cool touch.
I will confess that it wasn't until prepping for this episode that I realized that she's wearing Derek's fraternity
the necklace. Yes.
Yeah, never noticed it before.
See, no, and those are those are callbacks that I'm like, hey, if you're a fan of this franchise, you're gonna see that.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice touch.
But then if you have Dewey like, oh, you're still wearing Derek's necklace, your boyfriend that died, and like, he gave you his necklace, like that clunkiness is what Scream 3 is to me.
Sadly, there's a lot of parts like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thankfully, though, we have arrived at a part that tries for humor and succeeds. So this is the Sarah Darling at the studio. Mm-hmm. This is kind of funny because it's what they were afraid of giving Liev Schreiber to do. This is really all Jenny McCarthy acting against herself because it's just her on the phone with quote-unquote Roman.
Yeah, no, I think it's just really fun. And okay, this is when the putting the film in Hollywood works because because this movie isn't very mean, right? You don't get a lot of really harsh digs from the killer.
No.
The Sarah gets skewered like a fucking pig is great. It feels out of place in this movie, but it feels like it belongs in a Scream film.
Huh. That's not where I thought you were going to go with that. I thought you were going to talk about the cracks about her age and the nudity.
No. I mean, all that too. The one joke that doesn't work for me, though, is that the whole shower thing's been done. Hello, Vertigo.
Yeah.
That's not a good line for me.
Again, they think it's clever because she's so on the nose with all of these cultural references, but then she gets the most obvious Hitchcock film incorrect, and you're like, oh, come on.
But yeah, then we do get the whole, like, has there been another goddamn rewrite? How the fuck are we supposed to learn our line? It's all really fun. But then we get this pseudo chase scene where she's stuck in a props room.
Yeah, it's so disappointing because this really feels like it should be the first set piece, right? This is the CC of Scream 3, and yet it's over before it even begins.
Yeah, like, I mean, I love this concept. Like, her using all the fake weapons, like, I think it's really cool. And then it's just, he punches her through the window and stabs her in the back, and she is immediately dead, which, by the way, would not happen.
Right.
But this is where you feel that Columbine pull coming in, right? They're like, we can't make it too violent, so we're going to make the set piece goofy, which it is, but it works for me.
Sure.
But then her ultimate demise is just like, oh.
Yeah. It's so fast.
That's it. Like, that's it. Okay.
I will also say, folks, if you're playing the Scream 3 drinking game, drink every time someone gets stabbed in the back in this movie.
Oh my god.
And I know that Dewey has been stabbed in the back before. Like, it is kind of a hallmark of the franchise, but in this film, it honestly feels egregious. It feels like everyone is getting stabbed in the fucking back in this movie.
Yep. Well, we haven't gotten to Stone yet, so we're getting there.
Right? Okay, so Sarah Darling is dead. And then we catch up with Gail and Dewey. They have a chat about Diane Sawyer and how she tried to make it work. I was like, you're just reminding me of Drop Dead Gorgeous right now. I do like that Gail describes Jennifer Jolie as a second-rate Kmart direct-to-video knockoff. See, that's quippy, and I like it.
Yeah, then we get this whole, like, a woman called the studio went into the file on Sid for research. A month later, the room is ransacked, but I already removed it. My question was, I get that we have a file on Sid for, like, I guess character work. Yeah. Why does the studio's file on Sidney Prescott include her location?
Absolutely not. Is it keeping track of every person who ever survived any of the attacks so that, like, what, the actors can call them up and be like, I'd really just love to talk to you about your character motivation when you were trying to survive?
Yeah. It's
very unusual. Yeah.
Kevin Williamson would never.
Hashtag Kevin Williamson would never. Yeah.
Oh my god, our subtitle for the episode.
So we go to Jennifer Jolie's house. This is where they realize that the murders are happening in the order of the script, but of course they don't know which script because there's been a bunch of them. We're also introduced here to bodyguard Stephen Stone, Patrick Warburton, who we talked about just a couple of weeks ago and better watch out.
Yeah, and he's fun in this, if completely unnecessary.
Yeah, I'm surprised that they resisted the urge to just dress him in red. Red shirt? No? Okay.
I don't get it.
It's a joke on Star Trek that all the people who wear the red shirts are the people who are just going to die in the away missions.
You're so cute. I have never seen an episode of Star Trek.
Oh my god. I love that you don't know one of the longest running, most important, culturally significant
I've seen all the movies
history.
That Abrams did. I've seen those 3.
And you know that joke because there's red shirts in those.
But I don't. Who says that?
Oh my god. Okay.
I've never heard that in my life.
Cool. I'm just going to spam your Twitter feed. So, folks, feel free to let Trace know where the references to red shirts come from.
I have never heard that before.
Oh my god. I can't wait for you to just be like, you're just going to be splooged in red shirt references now.
I'm sure it's popular because I know that people love Star Trek. But that you think that I have seen an episode of Star Trek is hilarious to me.
Oh, no. It transcends Star Trek. That's why I'm surprised.
Gotcha.
Okay. So, enter your favorite character, Trace. We've got Kincaid, and then we've got his partner, Wallace, who is played by Josh Pay. Pay?
I don't know, but he got cast because he was in Music of the Heart.
Oh my god, could not care. At least Patrick Dempsey is a very pleasing to look at. Like, honestly, I want to fall asleep in that hair. There is nothing about this Wallace character that I want nor need in this film.
I have never found Patrick Dempsey attractive. I don't know why. Even though all the Grey's Anatomy stuff, like people are like, oh my god, Big Dreamy. And I'm like, I don't. He has a witch nose and a witch chin. and I don't care about his hair.
Okay, fair. I hadn't thought about the witch nose before, admittedly.
But we do get, again, more fucking, like, Kruger trying to emulate Williamson, where they're talking about Sarah's body, and he goes, very Hannibal Lecter, very Seven. I'm like, what are you doing, movie?
Absolutely not to both of those references. Also, like, unless you're going to tell us that she was decapitated and eaten, your references suck balls.
It's so stupid.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
No.
Though, because Sarah Darling was there to meet with Roman, this is where they zero in on him, and the movie is now shut down.
But Jennifer Jolie can always go back to must-see TV, and we get this gifable moment where she's like,
I mean, everything Parker Posey does is a dream.
It's so good. It's so good.
The problem with a lot of this stuff is just like, the film thinks that we're spending time with these cast members from Stab 3, and I'm still just like, I can't even tell you half of their names at this point.
No. I mean, maybe Tom Prince is a Freddie Prinze Jr. reference. I don't know what Sarah Darling is.
I feel like that one's obvious and we should know it, but I can't identify it either.
Okay, we obviously know Angelina Tyler is Angelina Jolie, and Jennifer Jolie is Jennifer Aniston and Angelina Jolie.
I feel like Dion is a white person looking up okay, what are some traditional black names that I could reference?
Well, and he kind of fills the role of Joel from Scream 2, right? As like the black characters pointing out the black tropes in horror movies, but they don't give him anything to do.
No. That is my biggest issue with this part of the film, is that they introduce all of these characters. And I know, like, when we think about the characters that we meet on the college campus, like, we don't know anything about Portia de Rossi's character. We don't really even know anything about Cece's character. But because they are cast with recognizable actors, I feel like we are more likely to like them. Whereas these people are nobodies.
But you could even argue, though, we don't know much about them. Portia de Rossi and Rebecca Gayheart don't get death scenes, so all we know is their bitchy one-liners, which are really fun.
Right.
Sarah Michelle Gellar, Cece, we don't know much about her, but she at least gets a whole fucking set piece where we do at least kind of not even get to know her, but we get to spend time with her. The closest we get to that with these new characters is the Sarah Darling bit, which is why that set piece is as effective as it is, which again, as we already just discussed, isn't super effective.
Yeah.
When Dion, is that his name?
Yes.
When Dion dies, it's like we get this
it's Tyson. The actor's name is Dion. Oh my god,
sorry.
We're so terrible.
When Tyson dies, it's just a quick like Scooby Doo rug pull, and then he gets tossed over a balcony.
Oh my god. And then they won't even show us that. Yeah.
Yeah, and Tom Prince, again, cool set. We'll talk about it in a minute, but like he blows up. Like, basically, all of these deaths, they're in an ensemble. They don't get their own set piece. They're just like killed off in quick succession.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I made the red shirt reference, because it feels like they're literally just here as bodies to be killed later.
Yeah, exactly.
So movie shut down, Roman taken away, Sid gets a brief call from Ghostface using her mother's voice, and then we go to Jennifer Jolie's house. So this is where we get a little bit more exposition about the relationship between Jennifer Jolie, Dewey, and also Stephen Stone.
Quick thing, though, I don't love the Sid's ghost mom stuff.
I don't either. It's their deliberate attempt to cast doubt on whether Sydney has gone crazy.
But it doesn't work for me, and ghosts don't belong in my Scream movie.
I feel like there would have been better ways to have addressed the fact that she is haunted by the memories of what has happened to her in the previous two films without trying to literally embody it. I kind of get it that Roman is such a shit director that he would be orchestrating this sort of stuff, but that also doesn't make sense then that it happened earlier in the film.
Yeah.
Like, it happens unprompted after her dad drops off the groceries.
Right. Yeah.
I get what they're trying to do, I just don't think it's well executed.
No, I agree with that. So, now we're in Jennifer's house, and I do enjoy all of this. This is very comedy heavy. It's also the only time after Scream 2 that we get a mention of Tatum.
I actually clocked it. There's another brief unsaid reference to Tatum. But yeah, this is where Stephen Stone actually calls out Tatum to Dewey.
Who's the killer.
And then gets stabbed, yeah.
Stab in the back.
Yep.
Oh, also, okay, so again, people refer to this as, it's Scooby Doo, but like Scream. Because not only does he get stabbed in the back, he gets thrown and like the knife gets pushed into his back against the wall, and then the killer frying pans him in the face twice.
Yeah, it's starting to approach camp.
Yes, and I think had the film embraced that camp factor, it would be a better movie for it.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't have satisfied Scream fans.
No! Oh, it would have been a terrible finale closer, but it would have been, as a movie, more successful.
Right. And that is the problem, right? They're trying to bring everything to fruition to wrap this up as a trilogy, but then they're also giving us these very out-of-place comedic vibes because they're saying, A, it's Hollywood, and also B, because of the real-life context, we can't do what we would maybe normally do.
Right.
Yeah. So again, it's like, okay, do we want to forgive the film for not being able to do that stuff? Or do we say like, oh, fuck, I mean, 20 years later, we still are watching this movie and it's not that enjoyable.
I think if it was the last Scream film, I would be more willing to forgive it. But now that we have Scream 4 and we're getting Scream 5, I'm kind of like, all right, movie.
I'm not as forgiving anymore.
Yeah.
Hashtag Kevin Williamson would never.
Yep.
Okay. This part I actually do like.
The facts.
I wish it would go on a little bit longer. Yeah, so they discover Stephen Stone's body and they freak out. The lights go out. They run out of the house. The fax machine starts. It's feeding them pages of the script. Tom goes back into the kitchen. He gets blown up. And it all kind of works for me.
It does. I know I mentioned how I like the Sarah Darling bit. This, I think, is possibly the most successful sequence in the film for being captivating, moderately suspenseful.
Mm-hmm.
It's really silly because the killer is really banking on someone using a lighter to see the pages, or
Right.
that they would even go back in to read the pages.
Mm-hmm.
Also, where is Roman that he's like faxing this shit and can see them? It doesn't make any sense.
Oh yeah, again, don't think about the logistics. The funny thing is, like, in 2000, again, we're right on that cusp of everybody having very easy access to cell phones, and people, they don't use cell phones so much as we have cloned cell phone voices in this film. But, like, if you made this movie nowadays, people would just use their phone to light it, and then you'd have to come up with a completely different plan to blow everybody up.
Yeah.
So, yes, the surviving members from this party roll down the hill. There is a hilarious line from Parker Posey. It's, I think, ADR'd, but...
Where the hell were you?
No, not that part. It's
which
while
part?
they're rolling down the hill, she goes, I can't stop rolling.
I don't think I've even ever heard that before. Wait, is that really in the movie?
Yeah, man.
I have seen this movie so many times and I have never heard that.
It's so funny. It's because
Oh my
you're not
God.
seeing her. You're watching, I think, Gail and maybe Dewey. But yeah, they're rolling. And you just hear Jennifer Jolie, I can't stop rolling.
That makes me like the movie a little bit more. B-, y'all. B-.
There we go. It's slowly inching you up.
I've never heard that before.
Oh, it's really funny. Yeah. Okay, so they get to the bottom of this hill, and Ghostface tries to attack Gail. Dewey ends up saving her, but there's this moment of indecision where both Gail and Jennifer Jolie call for him, and he picks Gail. Ooh.
Yeah.
So this means that Jennifer Jolie gets very angry, and she punches Dewey, and then she gets punched in the face. This is our callback to 1 and 2. And then, of course, we get the infamous line, Trace, if you will.
My lawyer liked that.
Apparently, it was an improvised line from
Parker Posey?
Parker Posey. Yeah.
Oh my god. Ugh, Parker Posey. I know you'll never listen to this, but holy fuck.
Mhm.
If you ever do, I love you so much.
Just so good. And, of course, Angelina is still kicking around, so this is where she stumbles out, and we get another picture of Maureen Prescott. We missed it earlier in the house. There was a quick scene with Gail and Dewey where they talked about these pictures. They tie it back to Sunrise Studios, and Maureen went missing when she was 19 or 20, and they think that it's because she came to Hollywood to be an actress.
Because her pictures have the same background as the pictures that Jennifer Jolie has in her headshots.
Correct, yes. All right, so this is where we reintroduce Sydney into the A-plot because she is no longer out living in the woods. She has come to LA, which is great because Kincaid wants to see her. I will give props to Courtney Cox for this moment where she asks Dewey, do you have her number stored in your memory? And Dewey just looks up like, do I? And Gail goes, phone memory.
Yeah, that's really good, actually. See, again, it's comedy that's not trying too hard. That's the thing. This movie tries so hard.
Well, or the character-based comedy works, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
It's very hit and miss when it comes to the poking fun at Hollywood stuff.
Yeah.
So this is where we get possibly my least favorite scene of this film, the introduction of Martha Meeks, never before seen sister of Randy, played by out lesbian Heather Matarazzo.
So I love her.
Oh yeah, I mean we talked about her last year, nearly to this very week.
Yeah.
She's great. This movie does jack shit with her.
Yeah, it sucks. Although, I mean, again, risk of spoiling things.
Mm-hmm.
Rumor has it, I've just heard grapevines.
You think she's going to come back?
She might be in Scream 5.
I would love that because it feels like they need to pay this off.
Yeah, I agree. And again, wouldn't that be great if Scream 5 like retroactively made you appreciate Scream 3 more while also still being a really good movie?
I mean, sure, if you want to put it on that pedestal and make it climb over that mountain, okay.
So this whole thing, I hate this Randy cameo, but negative feedback following the death of Randy in Scream 2 had the production consider methods of having his character survive to appear in Scream 3, including having the character's family hide him away for safety while recuperating him from his injuries, but it was deemed too unbelievable, and the idea was replaced with the character appearing in a minor role via a pre-recorded video message, which, by the way, final product is 3 minutes long. They filmed over 2 hours of footage with Jamie Kennedy to get this done.
It is madness. I mean, honestly, if you listen to the audio commentary, you will hear just how frequently they reshot things or did like alternative versions of it. So I'm not surprised by the 2 hours, but it is nonsense. Like, I get that they wanted Jamie Kennedy to come back. We all sort of like Randy. It's been interesting, actually, this last year, Trace.
Yeah.
We have always been very pro-Randy, and we talked very openly about that. And I feel like in the last year, there's been a bit of a shift culturally, and now people are acknowledging that Randy is kind of a shit character. And it's made me reevaluate the way that I approach the first 2 films.
He's a movie incel, is basically what he is.
Yeah.
He's not a douchebag, even though he does creepily follow Sid to college. But yeah. I see the complaints about him and I understand them. This role of his right here makes no fucking sense and it doesn't make me like him anymore. It makes me like him less, actually.
Yeah, this to me is probably the least successful attempt by this film to stick with the, there's something new about a third film. The first film gets properly recognized for reinventing what slashers are doing in terms of meta approaches. Mm-hmm. And then the sequel obviously tackles the sequels, and some folks quibble with whether or not it does a good job with this. This idea of rules of a trilogy, A, doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
And B, comes to nothing.
Killer's superhuman, you gotta decapitate him or blow him up, which, P.S., blowing up does never equal death. Like, an explosion is the easiest escape for a killer. I hate that line. Anyone, including the main character, can die. This means you, Sid. Okay, well, no one dies. Which I'm fine with,
sure,
but people have issues with that, and I get that.
Right.
And then the past will come back to bite you in the ass. Any sins you committed in the past are about to break out and destroy you.
Which is kind of true, except that would only work if we're talking about Maureen.
Right.
And A, that also implies that it's Maureen who is responsible for this, and it's fucking not. It's Roman.
Yeah.
That is something that Sid actively addresses in the climax of this film, but I do feel like there is a ton of inappropriate slut-shaming / victim blaming in this movie, and it's really uncomfortable.
It's all at Maureen. Maureen needs her own... I mean, I don't want it, but, like, she needs her own prequel movie.
That was honestly my fear when they started to talk about, like, making new Scream films, is that they were going to give us the first year and follow Maureen, like, kind of a Twin Peaks walk with fire thing. And I was like, nope, thank you.
Ugh, no. Don't want it.
I will say, as much as people don't like Randy, and I don't think that Jamie Kennedy needed to come back for this, I do like his sign-off line where he says, good luck, Godspeed, and for some of you, I'll see you soon.
I don't like it.
Really?
No,
you don't think it's
dumb.
Touching? You're just done with the whole thing, aren't you?
No, but it's just very much like it's a somber note to end on what's meant to be a funny scene.
Mm-hmm.
So it tonally doesn't, it's off balance and doesn't work for me.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. So at this point, after being warned that all bets are off and everybody's at risk, this is when Gail decides she's going to go off solo.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. This is when the movie really kicks into high gear, though.
Yeah, because this is where we get the Gail and Jennifer show, and it's also where I think we get the single best cameo of this film, which is Carrie Fisher talking about how she is a Princess Leia lookalike.
So apparently they offered this role to Jamie Lee Curtis and she turned it down.
Okay.
And so I'm assuming it would have been like a Halloween gag.
Right.
But Carrie Fisher, bright, shining star as she is, said, fuck yeah, I'll do that. Give me a cigarette.
I mean, anybody who knows Carrie Fisher will know that she is completely open to making fun of herself and all of her vices, so I think this is a spot-on role. I don't know that Jamie Lee Curtis would have been a good fit, although having now seen her in Scream Queens, I do think that she probably would have played it just as well.
I think she would have too, but honestly, man, like, I like that it's Carrie Fisher in this. It's really fun. Her little jab at Judy Jurgenstern. I also love that she just knows the face of every single actor that has come through that studio.
Yes, yeah. It's a testimony to the people who, like, work the front end of businesses. It's like, the people you don't want to piss off are always the assistants and, like, the clerks because they remember everything.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Fuck yeah.
You know, we're going to get to the reappraisal of this film in light of Me Too and how it's weirdly addressing what will ultimately happen to Harvey Weinstein. But I find it uncomfortable knowing that Weinstein actually also recommended Carrie Fisher for this.
Oh.
And knowing what she was like in real life, I would have been very interested to see if she would have had comments about him. She, of course, died in 2016, a year before Me Too happened.
I actually cried when she died. Like, I was never a big Star Wars fan, but like, I mean, like, I like her. And it just, I cried.
She's like the people's princess of pop culture.
Yeah, it's just so acerbic. Like, I really want to read her memoirs, actually, because I'm sure they're great.
Oh my god, she's a brilliant writer. So yeah, Carrie Fisher, she's an absolute dream. This is where they discover that, of course, Maureen had a stage name of Rena Reynolds. What do you think of that name? That sounds like a porn star name, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. What is Carrie Fisher's...
You're like, and I have nothing further to say.
I'm just like, Rena Reynolds and Judy Jurgenstern. Kruger really liked alliteration. I actually think that Carrie Fisher's name in this movie... Oh, yeah. That's actually really funny. So it's Rena Reynolds, Judy Jurgenstern, and then Carrie Fisher's name is Bianca Burnett.
Goodness, I can't. Come on. What are we doing with names in this movie?
I love alliteration, but come on, dude. It's a fallback.
Yeah, it definitely seems like, okay, well, let's just make this a thing in Scream 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so we get yet another Angelina red herring moment with Sid in the bathroom.
Did you know that this bathroom is a replica of the bathroom from the first movie?
I did.
I did not know that until now.
Really?
No, I never. I think because that bathroom scene in the first movie is so weird to me. Like, I know we love it because of homicide, but it just never. Right, I never got it, but I get it now.
Well, I think part of it is that in this case it's flipped, right? Like, we're seeing it from the other end, so it doesn't immediately click because you're not seeing them where we saw them in the first film. Like, they're actually mirrored.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, sure, whatever. Honestly, all of the Angelina red herring stuff doesn't work for me because I don't ever buy her as the killer.
Yeah. Well, and again, it makes you wonder if the original ending had gone through and she was one of the killers, would this work better?
Right. And folks, in case you didn't know, we are going to talk about that. But yes, Angelina was originally one of the killers. There were going to be two.
Yep.
Okay, so now we get to one of your favorite set pieces, Trace. So this is where Sid finds the Woodborough set of Stab 3, and we get her replaying dialogue from her bedroom scene with Billy.
See, I like all this.
No, as I said, I like it. I just don't think that they do enough with it. I will give a shout out to the fact that there is a Creed poster on the wall of Sydney's fictitious bedroom. This franchise and their relationship to Creed, man.
No, that should have been in my rapid fire at the beginning. It's like The Bangs, Patrick Dempsey, The Comedy, and Creed.
Yeah, that'd be a boot for me.
They even like name drop Creed in the commentary where they're like, oh, we were so lucky to get this Creed song. And it's like, come on, Wes Craven.
Just no.
So, okay, this home replica chase, what I love about it does like completely duplicate her chase scene from the first movie, like when she's running up the stairs.
Correct. I will also say Scream 2, when Cece is running up the stairs and throwing things at the killer.
Yes, but again, you remember she has that weird door that locks the other door, and as a viewer, you're going through this scene like, oh, like I know what's happening, and yeah, close that closet door. And so when we actually get the reveal that there's nothing there, I think that's a really, really cool little surprise that the movie has for us. This scene was not present in the script itself. Craven paid to have the sets constructed, knowing he wanted to revisit the original film in some manner.
Yep.
After the construction of the sets, the scene was then written around the resulting areas, producing this scene in the final film.
So crazy.
But again, that's Craven. You can have a director like Michael Bay, who's like, yeah, Megan Fox, show your tits. But you can also have a director like Craven, who is like, hey, I care about this franchise, I care about these characters, even though I'm only doing this particular movie so I can make my Meryl Streep violin teacher movie, I still give a shit about it. And I don't know what to say about Craven's direction in this film, because it does feel kind of flat, honestly.
It's a little paint by numbers. Like, please let me get to my Meryl Streep blaxploitation movie.
Yes. But when you hear stories like that, when it's like, hey, Craven was changing the script with Kruger to say, hey, no, the characters are like this. He was adding this scene to give him more... Because honestly, I think when you walk away from this movie, this is one of the scenes that you do remember. And that it was Craven's idea speaks volumes.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. It's a good scene, and my biggest complaint is just I wish that they did more with it.
Yeah.
I particularly like the moment where she goes to throw open the door after she's run up the stairs, and she almost falls because it's a set. Because at this point, you've so completely forgotten that she's on a set because you're so used to seeing what this house looks like.
Yeah.
Like, Scream 3 is so clever in activating your memory of one in that regard, and then using that to play off your expectations.
That's actually what I'm saying, though. Is actually even the score that Marco Beltrami uses here mimics the score from 1.
Right.
So you actually feel like you're watching the same scene, and you know what's going to happen. So yeah, when she walks up, there's something there, it's great. And then we get this scene... Oh, sorry, the next part of this scene, where she walks into her mom's murder room.
So, I want to like this, but this is Ghost Sid mom stuff.
I like it until that. I don't need the mom or Ghostface under the sheet using the mom's voice, which, by the way, how?
Presumably from those 3 horror movies that she made with John Milton back in the day.
But again, like, it works up until the body rises. Because when she walks in and she sees the blood everywhere, she sees the body, like, I think this is really, really good. And it's a really good examination of trauma, which it's not really examining it. All we're getting is Neve Campbell's eye acting here.
Yeah.
And it's good. Like, imagine walking into a movie replica set of your real life mother's murder. Like, this is really cool. But then the film, does this ghost shit, which I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah, and problematically, it never really gives Sid time to process that because she's so worried about being stalked by the killer that it has to be Dewey, it has to be Kincaid, Ghostface isn't in here, ooh, we don't believe you. And, I mean, I know we're talking about a fucking slasher movie, but considering what Scream gives us and the development, the arc that it gives Sid, I would have loved for this to have just take a couple of extra beats and let us sit with what Sid would go through having to relive that scene, that crime scene. Because also for us, this is the first time we've ever seen it. We've never seen the crime scene. They never showed that to us in other films. So this is a brand new moment for us too. And the film doesn't let us sit with it.
Yeah. I agree completely with you. It's, again, on paper, a great idea that isn't executed well. It's a combination of editing, maybe even direction, and the writing.
I'll give credit to Craven for directing this part, but I will agree that the other parts of this movie do feel a little more flat than I'm used to from him.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so sadly, that is the end. We will not revisit this set, and that's a wrap on the Woodsboro.
And in case you didn't like Kincaid enough, we get this part where she mentions Woodsboro because she's like, hey, I was in my house. And he goes, that's not Woodsboro, Sydney. And it is the most reprehensible line from this stupid-ass cop character.
Yeah, remember that we're not entirely sure whether we're supposed to trust him at this point. So this is them trying to cast a shadow of a doubt on him and then get her into a car with him.
Well, but also cast doubt on her sanity. Like, that's the thing. And I don't know that the film is successful in either one of these things.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to hear from other folks. Did you watch this movie and ever for a moment think, oh yeah, Sid has lost her marbles?
Or Dempsey's the killer.
Maybe. I wondered because he could have been a kind of Mickey where he only shows up a couple of times.
I think if he was the killer, I would have like actively hated this movie.
That is the problem. Like, Angelina just shows up all the time. You're like, okay, well, that's red herring. And Kincaid is over the top.
Yeah.
I don't think that this is a good performance from Dempsey for the most part. When he's kind, I actually think it's okay. But when he's trying to come off as
Menacing.
morally questionable, or menacing, I'm just like, dude, come on.
Yeah.
Who are you trying to convince here?
I totally agree.
Okay, so let's cut back to the other storyline that we're following, which is Gail and Jennifer and Dewey. They break into Milton's office and they want to talk about Rena Reynolds and...
You're obsessed with her and you're obsessed with her daughter!
Oh my god.
It's so good.
If nothing else, for that line delivery, this scene needs to exist. This is where we get the uncomfortable intersection between reality and filmmaking in Scream 3. But I do think that this is also the reason why the film has been reappraised in the wake of Me Too. So Milton is very clearly a stand-in for a certain kind of director.
Yeah.
But now we read him as a Harvey Weinstein figure.
I think it's a really fascinating... I mean, again, especially now, I don't know what Aaron Kruger knew about Weinstein, but you know that Wes Craven directing this scene is like, well, this is Harvey Weinstein. Like, especially what we know now about him, right?
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, there are clearly parallels here. In 2019, so just 2 years ago, the editor, Patrick Lussier, he basically said, of those particular themes and Wes Craven's approach to them, he goes, Wes, I think, was very interested in that character of Henriksen as not necessarily the villain. I mean, he certainly is a villain, but as a catalyst for the villain's motivation. He's really the spark for the events, or retconned that he is the spark for those events in the entire series. And I do think it's a fascinating thing, right?
Right.
It's just like the movie doesn't explore it enough. We get this one scene and then we get his death later, so it's kind of like, all right.
Yeah, and it plays just a little too broadly. Like, I get that they don't want to hammer it home, but having Henriksen deliver lines like, this is not the city for innocence, and you're just like, oh, come on. It's not handling it with the directness or the deftness that it needs to. It's landing somewhere in the middle, which leads you to just know that Milton's not a good figure, but also the film never clearly establishes that, you know, he's been doing this to other women, that he is a monster. Like, the film just kind of wants to say, yeah, this is a why, and we're not really going to explore that.
In the film itself, it's underdeveloped, but I think the most fascinating thing to come out of this is that since Me Too, people have talked about this more, and people are observing things more. So the film honestly doesn't really do a lot with it, but we as viewers, as journalists, as consumers, are looking at this and saying, oh, I see this. There's commentary in this movie about sexual misconduct in Hollywood, predatory men on the casting couch, or whatever.
Right.
And it's great that we're having these conversations, and you do wonder, you know, like, did Harvey Weinstein, like, watch any of this movie and be like, you fuckers?
Oh, shit.
But you could also say, okay, well, did they sneak it in?
I don't think so, because it's just too prominent in the
text, like that's
right?
the whole franchise hinges on Harvey Weinstein being the catalyst,
sexual predator. Yeah,
and it's really cool. The problem is, like, again, it's there. That's what this is about. But like, we don't get to see Sid like talk to Lance Henriksen, you know?
No, she meets both of the men who are apparently responsible for all of the horrible shit in her life. She meets one of them when his throat is slit, and the other one when he talks about being her brother.
Honestly, that might be this film has lots of problems.
It's a big problem, yeah.
No, it is. This film has lots of problems with tone and whatever, and the writing and whatever, the meta. But I think had they done something more with Sid to give us some more catharsis, and again, we'll talk about the very last shot, which I do think is a really good ending for the character, but we don't get anything with her to react to this. And even when it's with Roman in the end, it's just pure anger and like, fuck you, there's good moments and there's good dialogue there, but like what you were wanting in the replica house scene, there's no moment to like sit and like resonate with this. And that's what I wish we had.
It's disappointing, too, because if you think back to that first film, really, most of Sydney's arc in just the standalone Scream, the first one, it's about her processing the realization that she really didn't know her mother at all.
Right.
And Scream 3 seems to want to do the same thing by saying there was so much more even than that you didn't know about your mom. But it also doesn't want to have Sydney come to any kind of reckoning with that. Like, I'm not suggesting I wanted scenes of Sid agonizing over the fact that her mom was gang raped 3 ways till Sunday, as Roman so politely says in the climax.
They fucked her 3 ways from Sunday.
Yeah. And let's be clear, the insinuation that I take from this is not that Maureen was a willing participant or even that she was, doing it for the casting couch. It's like this woman was coerced by people in positions of power, and that is rape.
It is, but here's the thing. The movie doesn't slut-shame her. Billy and Stu slut-shame her.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes her quote-unquote sluttiness as a direct result of her rape in her past. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't sit fully well with me. Like, oh, she was raped, so she became a quote-unquote slut/cheating wife.
Well, bear in mind that this is coming from the mouths of exclusively male characters.
Absolutely, absolutely. But also, I'm just going with what the film is giving us, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely making a correlation. Like, if you are a victim of sexual assault, you will go on to become a promiscuous woman who will then become an adulterer and ruin other people's marriages and produce serial killers.
And that's the only way, like, you could give me a Maureen Prescott prequel. Again, I don't want it because I just don't really care. But I'm sorry, it's not up against Maureen or this arc. I just hate prequels so much. I really don't care.
Well, I don't think there's a lot to be mined from that, except for the opportunities to explore what Maureen went through. Because really, she's like a specter that just hangs over the entire franchise. Like, even in this film where she actually gets to do a certain amount, she's still a ghost. Like, she's just haunting the proceedings.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So all this to say, I appreciate that the film was trying to interrogate some of these things that were obviously happening in real life and maybe directly commenting on what was happening with the Weinsteins.
Yeah.
I just wish that we could have gotten more, and maybe that wasn't possible in the year 2000. But I appreciate that people in our day and age can now go back and look at this film. Like, people like this film more because of this storyline.
And I think that's great. His dialogue here, Lance Henriksen's dialogue, he says, nothing happened to her that she didn't invite. Things got out of hand. Maybe they did take advantage of her. Maybe the sad truth is this is not the city for innocence. That's a shitty-ass line.
Yep.
No charges were brought, and the bottom line is Rena Reynolds wouldn't play by the rules. Like, again, it's shitty, but it rings true, given what we know about Weinstein now, and about Hollywood.
Yeah.
There's a lot to mine there and a lot to discuss. It's just, I don't think the movie particularly handles it well.
Yeah, it proposes it, and then it's like, okay, you do the hard work. We're going to move on with our slasher storyline and our red herrings.
Absolutely. But that's the thing. Is this Scream, Like, I love that this is in this movie, but it's like, we're fighting two things here. We've got to move on with the slasher story, but we're also trying to keep it comedic because of Columbine, but we're also having this Harvey Weinstein meta thing. So it's just like trying to do too many things at once.
It's a lot, yeah. And as a result, unfortunately, it doesn't really do most of them well.
Yeah.
So speaking of our red herrings, we do jump back to Kincaid and Sid in his office. This is where we find out about his Hollywood connections. Possibly worst line in this entire movie is where Sid asks him what his favorite scary movie is. Trace the answer.
My life. Joe, I wrote oof.
God.
I wrote oof in all caps. It is terrible. It is the worst line in this movie. I don't even know what the fuck they were thinking with this. Like,
it feels like, okay, we're going to put in something better later, and then we just never got around to it.
It is I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was going to do it if you didn't, but, like, it is atrocious.
You have to. It's, like, in line with how good the Parker Posey stuff is. You're like, and then an example of terrible writing.
I don't think there is a single line in the franchise that is as bad as that one. And I know that sounds hyperbolic, but I'm not going to lie. Like, I cannot think of something that has made me cringe more than that line in this franchise.
Honestly, know what it reminds me of? The absolute thud that follows Halle Berry's line about the toad struck by lightning.
Do you know what happens to a toad when it's struck by lightning? The same thing that happens to everything else. I'm Halle Berry and I hate being in this movie.
Oh my god. I recently said I really want that kind of true Hollywood story about what happened between her and Bryan Singer.
It's a fair request.
Well, I mean, let's just be honest, it was probably racism and sexism.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, good times. Okay, so this is when Dewey gets a call from quote-unquote Sydney.
Okay.
Yep. Oh, we haven't talked about the voice decoder.
Yeah, okay, so I don't like this thing because as soon as you know it exists, which you know from the first scene of the movie...
From Cotton Scene, yeah.
It's just like, okay, well, we know what this is. Like, there's no suspense here. And granted, do you think the movie actually thinks it's fooling us? I don't know if it does.
No, I think we're supposed to be in the know, but the characters don't.
But
so
I don't like
the tension
that.
comes from the characters potentially getting into dangerous situations, and we know it's coming.
I actively hate that. That doesn't belong in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, I can't fight you on it. I don't love it. I don't think I hate it as much as you. But even in 2000, people were like, "So what the fuck is up with this magical voice?"
But it's all, it's hey y'all. We know it's not Sydney. I don't like being ahead of these characters. I don't. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think there's a point in 1, 2, or 4 where we are ahead of the characters.
Yeah.
I feel like we're always with them. And this is the only film in the franchise, to my knowledge, where we are ahead of the characters and thus they look stupid. And I don't like thinking that these characters are stupid.
And more so than ever, it feels like a lazy plot contrivance. Like, how am I going to get people from point A to point B? Okay, well, how about if the killer has a magical voice decoder?
Well, and when you think about, okay, cool, the original climax is going to take place, let's say, in the studio set of Sydney's house. Oops, no, we're going to put it in this other house, mansion thing. How do we get everyone there? Well, let's write something up the morning of really quick.
Right, yeah. We've got this great set. It was used in Halloween H2O, and we're going to make do with it, but we got to get everybody there, so random voice calls.
I will say, never caught that fact, and even I was looking for things that looked familiar from Halloween H2O, and I didn't see it.
Okay, so I was paying specific attention on the second rewatch, and I think the scene right before... God damn it, I keep wanting to call her Angelina, before... she runs off in her wacky Cindy from Scary Movie 2 run. When Gail and Jennifer are walking down the hallway, I think that's the hallway where Jamie Lee Curtis hides Josh Hartnett and what's-her-face, and then they get attacked.
Michelle, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay.
I'm sorry, that was a very long diatribe to get to.
That's okay. No, by all means. This is a long episode. Fuck
I'm
it.
getting so tired.
We're going to go for 3 hours for our 3-fers.
Jesus, no, thank you.
On Scream 3.
And you're editing all of them. Also, I did not consent to 3-fer. We talked about that.
No, I know. We'll just call it the 3s. The 3s.
God, that sounds like a Charlie Kaufman movie.
The horror thweers.
No. Okay. Back to your corner, sir.
Hashtag Kevin Williamson would never.
Right. Okay, so everybody gathers at this party. Let's go to the party. I've lost my spot.
All right, so I was like, oh, fuck. Like, we're already at this party, which is the end of the movie. And I was like, that's a really long time to devote to this. But then I caught myself because I was like, okay, we're at the 75-minute mark. There's 40 minutes left of this movie.
Right.
But the first movie has the same thing where we start the party with 50 minutes left of Scream.
Are you seeing the parallels to the first film now?
I am seeing it. The problem is the 50 minutes of Scream's climax go by so much faster and are so much more effective than the 40 minutes of Scream 3's climax.
Yeah, sadly, there just isn't a ton of stuff here that really grabs you. Like, I will give a shout out when we get to it. I think there's a moment that works very well for me. But, they find the Ghostface costume. They've got the voice modifier. People start splitting up, which is dumb. We find Roman's corpse and Jennifer is hiding. So this is the first kind of, like, get out of jail free card because Gail 100% checks his pulse and he ain't dead.
I hate this Roman's fake out death is the worst thing. I hate it. I remember watching it as a 13-year-old, 14-year-old and being like, well, that doesn't seem right. Like, we've never had this in a Scream movie where it's like, oh, someone's dead. Oops, they're not dead. They're fake. Oh, no. Sorry. I'm catching myself.
I was going to say, I think we have. Yeah.
It's Scream with Billy. It's Billy.
Yeah. Which, again, parallel to the first film.
It is a parallel to the first film, but it's not handled as well.
No. Because in that first film, there's someone else to get Sydney away before she can properly check to make sure that Billy
Billy gets stabbed. He says that stupid C line, or Sid, or whatever the fuck he says. And she has to run because the killer is right there. Yeah. With this, because it's Roman is the killer, he has to go through this whole thing of, like, setting up his own fake murder.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
I wouldn't actually mind it if they didn't let Gale get close to him. Like, if Jennifer had have jumped out of the shadows. But also, like, why is Jennifer hiding in the shadows? Was she watching Roman while he was applying all... Like, it just doesn't make sense.
It would make sense if there was a second killer that could jump out and go after her. The problem is, it is the killer, the only killer, who is faking his own death, also applying fake blood to his wound, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Kruger misunderstood how the first film worked.
Yeah.
This is lazy, and it is Scooby Doo. And I say that as someone who loves Scooby Doo, but when you're walking into Scooby Doo, you know what you're getting, because it's stupid.
This is secret Scooby Doo, and it's bad.
No, I mean, it's silly. It's stupid. This is reminding me of the worst things about Scooby Doo, but the things that make Scooby Doo Scooby Doo. This is not Scooby Doo. I have said Scooby Doo 1,000 times.
I was going to say, can we move on now?
Move on.
Okay, so Gale and Jennifer make their way back upstairs. They run into Angelina. She reveals that there's a secret passage. Shout out to the secret passages. I do like the secret passages.
I do like that too, but again, not used enough. And when it is used, it's not used well.
I'm going to politely disagree.
Okay. Well, when we get to Parker Posey's death, we can talk about that.
Right. Also, for someone who said you didn't want to go too negative, you're being very negative.
I know. It's, I'm very frustrated, but I still think it's fun.
Okay.
I'm just critiquing it.
Lean into the fun a little more then.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
No, I mean, you're right. Because again, I don't dislike this movie. I just, okay, you're going to laugh at me.
Okay.
I was looking at my letterbox today. And you rightfully pointed out to me last night when you said, "Are you all right?" Because I was watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation.
Mm-hmm.
I give that movie a higher score than I give Scream 3.
Oh, but those are different contexts.
No, they 100% are. But if we're talking about franchise roles, like Next Generation, well, you could argue that maybe about Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which is also very funny and silly.
Right.
But Next Generation is very much like, oh, this is silly and stupid and makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
But it almost like borderline embraces it. I know it's been a year and a half since you've seen it, but like it's just really entertaining to me at how bad it is.
Well, and it's like that consistently all the way through.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know whether they were trying to make a good movie or not, but at least that movie's consistent. Whereas with Scream, you can feel these like peaks and valleys. Like sometimes it's actually pretty good, and then other times you're like, Roman's faking his own death? What?
Well, and that's the thing. Yeah, it's all about like what I'm feeling like the movie's trying to do. I don't know what Next Generation's trying to do, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But I know that I really enjoy watching it.
Yeah.
Whereas this, though, this is a big studio film that has designs. And I don't know if it accomplishes what it's trying to do. And that's my issue with it.
Right. The frustration is there.
Like, I think that this is a better movie than The Next Generation. But I think that The Next Generation is better at doing what it's trying to do than what Scream 3 is.
Right. Okay.
So, I don't know.
No, I get it. Okay, so at this point, we kill off Angelina.
She didn't fuck that pig Milton to be whatever 2 second-rate actresses.
Yeah, I mean, this leans into this idea that Hollywood is a place where in order to get ahead, you have to compromise on your values, because we also heard earlier that Tom tried to hit on her and she turned him down. But then, of course, here she's saying she slept with Milton to get the role.
But it also makes her like a real huge bitch. Like, she was like the innocent / red herring character in this movie. And then she becomes this huge bitch where she's like, second-rate celebrities like you two. Mm-hmm. I'm like, this isn't the Angelina that I know, that we've met. And granted, it could be like, yeah, she's actually like this. But like, then she immediately gets killed.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's it. Yeah, because again, like you're gonna do a big character reveal that she's actually been performing as a nice person the entire movie, and secretly she's as cutthroat as, say, a Gale Weathers, but then you just murder her before we can really do anything interesting.
But we do get that comment from Tom before he blows up, where he's like, I bet she stepped on every single girl she could to get that part. And again, that's a really cool idea, and I'm sure she did. She slept with Milton. Nothing comes from it, right? It's a one-line thing.
They're observations that the film doesn't want to address.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it just wants to keep making them, unfortunately.
Well, but then when you tie it into the Harvey Weinstein stuff, this character of Angelina almost comes across like, well, it's the victim's fault.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of blaming, as opposed to acknowledging, oh, Hollywood is a system that preys on the vulnerability of women who are trying to get ahead because it can just gobble them up because there's a million other women who would love to step in.
For sure.
Because even like the idea about the film getting shut down and what it does for people's careers, and even, you know, that line that you referenced where Jennifer Jolie can just go back to must-see TV, it's played for comedy, but the reality is that someone like Jennifer Jolie is much better prepared for what happens because she does have something else she can fall back on. The Angelina character has nothing. This is all she has, which... Again, like they want to play her shoplifting all of these things for comedy, but there's something really terribly sad about the possibility that this small town girl just had the one chance at fame and all she's got is a fucking ghost face.
When she says, I may never win another role again, which, again, win another role is funny in and of itself.
Well, because she won it as a contest, right?
Right. It's prescient because we have like Scream Queens, not the Jamie Lee Curtis show, but the one that MTV did where they had the Saw actresses. Like,
right, yes.
It's very prescient. It's actually quite funny, but it doesn't do anything with it.
No. They're all too disconnected, so we can put the pieces together in hindsight, but the film is really just interested in saying like, oh, there's this smattering of covert sexual assault that happens. Everybody knows, but we sweep it under the table. But don't worry, it'll become important about Sid's mom.
So we get this next scene, which, okay, I will confess that I actually love this scene. So basically it's like, you know, they see Angelina. Dewey's like, what's going on? And the killer comes and like punches him.
Yeah.
They all end up in this bedroom, and they're all fighting the killer. Gale throws a vase at the killer. Jennifer ends up behind a trap door.
Yep.
I actually think all this is really fun, exciting action. It's very comedic. It's not very suspenseful, but it's also like a situation that we've never really seen the Ghostface killer in before, where we're getting like multiple 4 characters in one room fighting Ghostface, and it's cool. I think it's great. It lasts for 30 seconds, but it's there.
Yeah, it definitely confirms that Tyson is completely useless. He tries to be the hero and it doesn't work out for him. But it is one of those like, oh, what would happen if everybody ganged up on Ghostface when you had the chance?
Okay, do you love, though, when he's running down the stairs and he gets a, oh, you motherfucker?
I do like that part.
I do too.
I don't like the part where he gets the rug literally pulled out from under him.
I know, but that is Scooby Doo. Like, that is literally Scooby Doo.
Yes.
And it's mind-boggling to me that anyone thought that was a good idea.
Yeah. When was Scooby-Doo the movie?
The movie was 2002, so it was 2 years after this.
Mm-hmm.
But Zombie Island was 2 years before this. Oh, actually, Zombie Island was between Scream 2 and 3.
Oh my god. We figured it out. The missing link. They were studying Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. Aaron Kruger, we have figured you out, you fucker.
You watched
Scooby-Doo. You motherfucker.
he watched Zombie Island and Witches Ghost. That's what it was.
Right, and then he studied dialogue from Scream 1 and 2.
Yep, and then Craven was like, let me help you with this.
Yeah, I'm just gonna give you a couple of pointers.
I love it.
Oh, God. Okay, so now we get to Jennifer's death scene. So she has fallen through this trapdoor. She can't find her way out. The killer tracks her down, corners her. She's pounding against this double-sided mirror. Dewey shoots them out, but not fast enough, and she's dead.
Oh my god, that was really fast, but sorry, I was drinking my drink. The first time I saw this movie, I didn't even know she died.
Yeah, they do not hold on it for very long.
Should we get that great line where she's like, I'm the killer in Stab 3?
Yeah. I mean, it kind of speaks back to what Cotton would have said if they had kept the original openings, but also it's like Tatum in one where she's like, I want to be in the sequel.
Oh, I don't know. Nevertheless, what an unceremonious death for this character. I mean, you pointed out, I have not been the most kind to this movie in this recording. This is my biggest, this movie is a crime because it does this to this character.
It's almost like they didn't know what they had, except that we know that Wes Craven was very much on board with what Parker Posey is doing in the performance. So it seems strange that they didn't want to give her a bigger set piece.
Well, but again, that's where Columbine comes in, right? Like, we see her get stabbed. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Random rewind, and you can cut this out in editing if you want. The editing is a bit weird. Way back in Kelly Rutherford's death scene.
Oh my God.
No, I know. But she gets stabbed in the back, but the film cuts. Like, basically, once the killer comes and, stabs her, the film does not a cut, but a jump cut to where it, shifts. But it's the same thing. And I was like, was there a blood spray that, they wanted to cut out? I don't know what's going on here. That's what this scene feels like to me, where it's like we see Parker Posey get stabbed in the stomach, and then she just spills out when Dewey does his stupid shooting the mirrors thing, because he's going one at a time. It's so stupid.
So slow.
It's bad. Get a machine gun and just shoot them all.
Yeah, and if we want to play shoot holes in the plot, then we can also say, so that was a dead end, presumably, unless Jennifer just couldn't figure out how to open up the other part of the trapdoor, but where did Ghostface go?
That's a great fucking question, dude. I don't know.
That was always my big thing, is I was like, he literally was right there, and that was a dead end.
Oh, and, I'm sorry, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Courtney Cox's scream during this bit. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a female Wilhelm scream here, and whether it is just a Wilhelm scream or if it is Courtney Cox's scream mixed with a Wilhelm scream, I don't know.
Do you want to explain what that is? Because you're saying it like everyone's going to know.
Oh, you're right. No, you're right. A Wilhelm scream is a stock scream that they play in a lot of movies. It's typically a male scream, which you might hear right now. But there is a female Wilhelm scream that sounds like this. And then we get Courtney Cox's scream that sounds like this.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why you're so surprised, because you did just say it's a stock thing that they do.
I just think it's silly. Like, you have $40 million. Why are you using a stock scream?
As we've learned, movie making is not always a seamless process. So, folks, if you didn't listen to our Terror Train episode, Chris from Homos on Haunted Hill, he mentioned that sometimes when people scream on set, they can actually blow the mic, and then you have to go back and do it in post. So I just wonder if it was either Courtney Cox couldn't scream that well that day, or it just didn't like it on set.
That's true.
Like, I'm tired. I can't scream anymore.
All right, so...
Okay, so I do want to give a shout out to possibly my favorite scene in this section of the film, when Gail gets attacked and she has to kick back against the wall so that she and Ghostface fall.
I actually do like this too, but again, it's kind of redoing the cop car scene from 2. Where, again, Ghostface is at the bottom of the stairs, and she's in the basement, and she's like, oh, I need to, crawl over him. There is a really good scare, though, where he, stabs the stair.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. And then, we have her, I guess we skipped over the part where they find the voice changer, but whatever.
No, we mentioned it. You've just been drinking a lot.
No.
He's back on the drink.
We kind of get this good moment, though, where she does call Dewey, and he's like, well, how do I know this is you? But it doesn't last long enough, right?
Well, because at this point, we are trying to ramp up.
And bring Sydney into the movie.
Oh, right. Because remember, she's been off screen this entire time. The comedy bit that works for me in this tail end part is where we see the knife get thrown and the camera actually follows the knife as it circles towards Dewey, and it just hits him in the face and knocks him out.
So you like this?
This, for me, is Scooby Doo comedy that works.
Okay. I don't think it works personally, but I can see why it works for you.
Yeah. Apparently, they were actually trying to scare people that Dewey would die here. We were meant to think that he was just going to get a knife in the head and he would die.
They'll never kill Dewey unless Scream 5 maybe decides to do it.
Only time will tell. Yeah.
1 year away, y'all.
Yeah. Okay. So at this point, it's like Sydney gets lured. She discovers that Gail and Dewey have been kept alive as bait. Kincaid is also there. Who could care?
Do you buy this? That he keeps Gail and Dewey as bait?
This is something that hasn't happened in any of the other
Ever.
movies. So it is well, actually, no, we're wrong again. Derek from 2.
Fuck. You know
Clearly,
what? You're
we
right.
needed to revisit all of the films before we recorded this.
But it also seems like a pale imitation, right? Because they kill Derek.
True.
And this isn't to say that I want Gale or Dewey to be killed, but with what this film sets up, it's clearly mimicking things from the first 2 movies, as you rightfully pointed out. It doesn't follow through on them.
I think part of it is that it's just doing the homage, and there's not always a lot of satisfaction in that. So we did mention in our Freaky episode that sometimes a homage just makes you think of another movie, and it doesn't do anything more than that. And in this case, it feels like Scream 3 is saying, hey, remember all these great moments from 1 and 2? And we're like, yeah! And then Scream 3 goes, cool, we're going to move on. You're just like, okay. I mean, I guess I thought you were going to give us a bit more, but sure. Okay.
So yeah, she gets the gun, she gets metal detected, whatever the fuck.
Whatever.
What do we think about "It's your turn to scream, asshole"?
I like it.
Really?
Well, I like that Sydney actually comes prepared with a plan. She's not
Yes.
just willingly walking into danger.
You know what? Fair. That's fair.
You're like, I was going to come down hard on it, but I'm going to refrain.
I don't like the line. I do like the circumstances.
Okay. Yeah, you know what? I mean, the line's not super great, but this is where you could see somebody being like, yeah, Sid's going to be Linda Hamilton.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and then we also get this fake out with Kincaid. Oh, who they only brought back. He wasn't in the original script to be in this scene, but they realized he just disappeared from the movie.
Yeah.
So they wrote him into this scene.
Which is, I guess, kind of admirable because they were like, ooh, well, we don't just want a gaping plot point, but Kincaid is such a non-entity that when he does come back, I was like, okay, cool. How's it going? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get to this ending, shall we? So
Yeah.
Sydney gets locked in the screening room. She sees a video of her mother. Ghostface comes out. It is revealed to be Roman, the director that she has never met before, so he actually has to introduce himself.
Oh, I didn't even... She has never met Roman.
She's never met him.
That feels like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, she's never met Milton, and she's never met him. So then she gets upset when she watches this other dude kill Milton. I mean, presumably she's upset because she just watched somebody die, but it's like she has no context for any of these people's motivations.
I need you to tell me this too. So this scene is intercut with Dewey and Gale escaping, checking on Kincaid. And...
trying to get the door,
Yes.
Dewey sticking the pin in the outlet so that he can short-circuit it.
I'm sorry, Dewey, the master of unlocking, and Resident Evil fans will understand what that means. In Resident Evil 1, the first game, there's a whole thing where Jill... This character hands her a lockpick, and he goes, well, you're Jill, the master of unlocking. It's really bad. I think it cuts down on the suspense in what we're seeing in the Sydney Roman stuff. There's also a really weird score choice when Dewey frees himself, and then he's freeing Gale, but we get this kind of like whimsical, like type thing. It doesn't feel like it belongs in this film. It's very weird. And it's intercutting with what should be a climactic, momentous scene with Sydney.
Yeah, I think it's part of the problem with keeping Gale and Dewey alive in this moment is that we need updates about them and their status and whether they're trying to protect her or help her. But you're right. You know, the cross-cutting needlessly distracts us from what is turning out to be an incredibly large retcon of the entire franchise up to this point. Because this is when Roman reveals that, yes, he is her brother, that he tracked down Maureen. She basically said she didn't want anything to do with him.
Fuck off, child of mine.
Right? Which, I mean, you know, okay, I want to bury that past behind me, especially if you think about it from her point of view. She's like, I went to Hollywood and then I was gang raped.
Yeah. Well, and there's a conversation to be had there, which had this movie been made in 2020, it might have had, but it doesn't have this in 2000.
Or it would have been picked over far more aggressively. Like, people would have been mad that they just randomly introduced this and then didn't unpack it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then Roman reveals himself to be the mastermind behind all of the events of Scream 1, where he groomed Billy, got him to recruit Stu, and blame Cotton Weary.
So, I want to point this out. This ending was filmed 3 times.
Yeah. You could see it.
In January 2000, now this is a month before the movie comes to theaters. 3 months after completing principal photography, the inning was refilmed when it was decided to be an inadequate conclusion. Originally, the inning consisted of Sydney easily defeating Roman. There's no bit with Sydney getting shot, and there's no mother's dead. I've still got to make my movie.
Right.
Whatever. Did you watch these endings on the Blu-ray?
I did, yeah. It's much slower. It's not as exciting.
Most of it comprises of Sydney, like, crouching down and hiding.
Yeah.
And their reasoning was, oh, well, the room's too small. It's not believable that she would be able to, like, crouch and hide from this person.
Mm-hmm. There's even a line in that deleted cut where Roman says, Sydney, the room's not that big.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I do have to say this. I don't need her getting shot because I honestly... I don't know. Like, when you first saw this movie, when she got shot, were you like, oh shit, she's shot?
Yes, admittedly.
Okay.
Because at this point, you know, we've had that Randy video where he said, everyone can die, Sydney, even you. And I thought, fuck, what if they actually do kill Sydney in this concluding chapter?
You're gonna hate me. I was more worried about Deputy Judy when she gets shot in Scream 4.
Jesus Christ. Your
We're the best,
priorities, man.
save your chest!
In hindsight, what I've come around to is there's kind of an interesting symbolism in that she wears the bulletproof vest and so does Roman. And you're like, oh, they really are siblings because they think alike.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I mean, I don't love it, but...
No, I do too. I guess I don't know. For me, it was similar to the Sydney calling Dewey and Gale to be like, I'm going to this party, by the way, I have a dead voice, but here you go. This is me, Sydney. I promise it's me.
Right. No, guys, really, I swear it's me.
It's me, Sydney. It reached the same thing to me where I was like, okay, this is the screenwriter, like, trying to, like, fake us out again.
Right. Okay.
Oh, but I am being a fucking negative Nancy. I'm sorry, guys.
No, it's fine. I mean, this is not your favorite of the franchise.
I enjoy watching it, but honestly, yeah, I would watch any of the other films over this one.
Sure. I will say the best moment that captures what Sydney is like during these climactic moments is where Roman is just going on and on and on, and she just goes, can we get on with it? I've heard all this shit before.
I think that's great. I think the fuck you! I think that is great. It's just the overall concept of this character.
Right.
That I think doesn't work.
It's tricky too. I remember back in 2000, people really came down hard on Scott Foley because they didn't find him creepy enough. They didn't feel that he was compelling or believable as a villain.
I mean, he's not.
He's definitely not the most memorable of all of the Scream villains, but I mean, Roman's really also not a huge character. Like, he doesn't get the crazy villain monologue that some of the other killers get. But it's tough because people really were just like, no, but you're that guy from Felicity.
As someone who's never seen Felicity ever, a single episode, there's something to be said, though, about this scene that doesn't really work for me compared to a Mrs. Loomis scene, which is so cathartic, and even the Billy scene, which is so cathartic. Like,
right.
There's so much like in that where you're like, oh shit, oh fuck.
Yeah.
And then you get this, and it just doesn't have the same impact. And I know you wanted you wanted to discuss like the impact of retconning the first two films.
Yeah. It makes sense when you think about this film being the end of a trilogy and the film stopping here, that they wanted to bring everything back full circle. But it's also uncomfortable as a viewer to have this film kind of Scooby Doo pull the rug out from under its audience by saying, hey, everything that you thought you knew about these other two movies, it actually comes back to this one super bland white dude who's not very compelling. Like, he's the mastermind of all of these Scream films. And that is just a really hard sell that I don't think this film ever overcomes.
I think that the issue here, so with Scream 1, Billy is the boyfriend. He is a character in that movie.
Right.
Stu is a secondary character, but we still know him. Mrs. Loomis arguably has less to do in Scream 2 than what Scott Foley has in Scream 3.
Yeah, she's kind of not a character, but then Laurie Metcalf plays her to such the nth degree. It'd be like if Parker Posey was revealed to be the killer.
But also, Laurie Metcalf's character is tied to the killer in 1. So even though she has, before her reveal, has less to do in Scream 2, we can fill in the blanks because she's Billy's mother.
Right.
Laurie Metcalf's role is a familial blood relationship to the killer from One.
Okay.
Roman is just hey, I'm your secret brother. I'm going to show this video to your boyfriend. The connection isn't as deep for me. The Roman reveal seems to me so more out of left field than what Mrs. Loomis has going for it.
Right, yeah, because this is a character that we didn't even know existed. Like, we knew that Billy had a mother because she's referenced in One as having left, and that's part of the reason why he's fucked up. I mean, again, this film is trying to play off of eatable damage as an excuse for why young men become killers. Like, Roman is basically just Billy, only older. I think part of it is also that they're trying to go with the familial connection to Sydney because this is Sydney's story and it's about her family and her trauma.
Right.
I just don't think it works. Like, I don't know if having more Roman would have helped. I don't think having less of him does. But also, I just don't think that this is a twist that could have been executed satisfactorily.
So do you want the original ending where Angelina is also a killer?
I think it would have helped to excuse some of the plot points. So, folks, if you don't know, Angelina was meant to be Roman's lover, and I think a former classmate of Sydney. But part of this was also meant to be far creepier and more insidious and kind of nastier. Like, there's a line in the original draft, so this is the second version that Aaron Kruger wrote, where Roman, referring to Angelina, says, "And I kind of keep her around because it's a bit of a turn on. You know, in the movies, she's you, Sid. So every time I jump her bones, I'm doing you, technically."
See, okay, that is creepy as fuck, but that's like something that's like, oh, that's fucked up. I get this character now.
Yeah, like he's far sicker. Here you're just like, oh, you're just a whiny mama's boy.
Which, I mean, if we're going with the Lance Henriksen, Harvey Weinstein stuff, cool, you're a stupid little incel.
But then I think we needed more of Milton.
Yeah.
It almost seems like Milton should have been inadvertently grooming Roman in that way, right? Like, there should have been a twisted father figure-ness to that, but we also don't get enough. Like, those characters don't ever interact except in the first scene when they're introduced and the scene where Roman kills him.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point.
I just don't think the work was done into the killer. I think Aaron Kruger was like, but wouldn't it be amazing if I could retcon this whole thing and have it circle back? And you're like, yeah, but then do the fucking work.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. The idea of that is great.
Yeah.
This Roman reveal just feels so daytime soapy, and that is not an insult to daytime soaps. They have their merits.
But that's then like a Texas Chainsaw, The Next Generation, right? Like, they know their place, they know what they're trying to do.
Yes.
And Scream 3 hasn't been living in the soap zone.
No, again, based on the first two films, this is not the film that should have concluded this quote-unquote trilogy.
Right.
But again, like, you take these circumstances, like, you take Columbine, you take their fears over internet leakages.
Mm-hmm. The push to comedy, yeah.
I understand why this movie is this way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it, but I'm forgiving of it because I'm like, you know what? It was a tough situation.
Right. And really, I think that is the difference. So I don't think people, well, I'm sure there were some people who loved it, but not a lot of people loved it back in 2000. And people came around to it when they realized that some of the topics or the themes it was addressing are actually more relevant. But I don't think anybody can look at this film and say it's really succeeding in all of these areas. I think we've just discovered it's maybe a little more interesting than we initially gave it credit for. But all of these causal factors, this film was really starting from a bad spot, and it doesn't ever kind of dig itself out of that hole.
I agree. And then we lead into this ending.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, what do you think of the moment where Sydney grabs Roman's hand as he dies?
It feels very Halloween H2O.
Right?
I wrote that in my notes. I said, oh, this is like Halloween H2O. I don't love it.
It feels out of character for Sid, right? I get that, yes, this is the brother you didn't know that you had, or the stepbrother that you didn't know you had.
I get that she's like, you know what, you had a shitty life, but you also chose to build your shitty life on destroying me, who literally had nothing to do with your plight.
Yeah. That's the easiest criticism of, not the film, but like of Roman as a despicable character. And we talked about all of the horrible things that he insinuates, like being raped did to Maureen. And the film definitely comes down on, well, this guy is clearly messed up, fucked up, misguided, and so on. But it's also weird that Sydney's then like, I kind of forgive you in your dying moments.
Also, this isn't in the alternate endings, but there's the line where he's like, he knows he's lost. He goes, mother's dead and there's nothing you can do about it. I still got to make my movie. Right. And then she goes, stab 3, right? Now, in the alternate endings, we don't have those lines. It just cuts to her stabbing him, going over, stab 3, right? Stabbing him.
Mm-hmm.
I hate, like, okay, mother's dead. I still get to make my movie. Like, why? Why did you want to make a movie? Why was this your grand scheme to make a movie about this?
Because it's meta. Because he's a director.
Whatever. Oh, you have an issue, though, because Dewey kills him.
Yeah, again, it's not my favorite part. I like the fact that the kill shot has always been given to women because this franchise is inherently feminist as fuck to me.
It's been given to Sydney both times before this.
Well, yeah, but I mean, Gale has always gotten in like a good shot, right?
Right. But the blow to the head has always been Sydney before this.
Yeah, and this film feels like it's saying, oh, well, now it's Dewey's turn because he's never gotten to do this. So, again, we get a play for comedy where Dewey can't figure out how to stop a killer with a flak jacket on, and then he gets the killing blow. And I just, you know what? I like Dewey, but that should be Sid's kill.
It almost feels like they're like, well, fuck you, Neve Campbell. You weren't available, so we're going to let David Arquette do this.
No, I think it's them trying to spread the love to the 3 principals.
No, they are. But it doesn't make any... Again, for your concluding chapter of your trilogy, why are you going to break the tradition? Maybe they thought they were being clever, but it doesn't work.
Okay. So that is the end of the film, but then we get this lovely kind of coda where Sid is now willing to leave the gate or the door to her house open. And we see that Dewey and Gale are going to give it another go.
And Kincaid is also there.
Literally, it's like ... and Kincaid is also there.
So they shot 3 endings. They shot one with him in a sling, which is what we get. They shot him without a sling, and they shot an ending without him there. Because they didn't know what was going to happen with this character.
Right. We're shooting for all possible options.
So I think the last shot of this movie is fantastic. Like her choosing not to lock the door or whatever. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
That's it.
Okay, that's it. Yeah. I think had this been the end of the franchise, this would have been a great way to leave these characters. I remember feeling satisfied that they had gotten their happy endings, but that they were hard-fought happy endings. And this seemed like a good place to say, you know what? And then they go off and live their happy lives. So that was satisfying back in the year 2000.
I think the important distinction, too, between this and 4, so this ends with, like, Sydney's conclusion, whereas 4 ends with Jill.
4 is like, we want to start a new trilogy, and then we didn't make enough money.
Absolutely. And I still like the ending of 4. Had we not gotten Scream 5, or if it wasn't in the cards for us to get Scream 5, I still would like Scream 4's ending as a franchise close. I think it works really well. But it's so different from this, right?
I mean, maybe this is the difference 11 years makes, right? Is we were culturally in a very different time where we were thinking about how social media changes people and makes people narcissists and more prone to acting badly for publicity. So I think 4 is very much a sign of the times, whereas in 2000, particularly, they were like, you know what? We've done this for 3 years. We're happy with these folks. Let's let them have their happy ending.
Which I get. With the people that hold the good ending of 3 against 4, I do understand that.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But nevertheless, I think, again, as much as I've, complained about this movie...
on this movie. Oh
no, I know. I think it's fine. I'm glad we have 4. I hope I will be glad that we have 5.
Right.
But I think it's fine. It's just, as a standalone movie, it's fine. It's just not the franchise closure this series deserves.
Yeah... This is watchable. You can find a lot of fault in its logistics and its plot, even in some of the characterizations. I think if you're watching for Dewey and Gale and Sydney, this is actually pretty okay. And at the time, I felt mostly fine with this being the end of the franchise. But you're right. I am glad that we get to continue this journey. I know a lot of people are sad that Sydney has to go through more trauma and more pain. I think sometimes I'm just also happy that I get more time with these characters. Selfishly, I just want to see what happened to these people after the story. I don't want that to end.
Yeah, I agree. It is selfish, but they're not real. So
I mean, they're also not real. But I think it's a testament to what Wes Craven and to a great extent Kevin Williamson did in creating and crafting these characters that we are so invested. Like, you don't see the kind of internet debate about whether a character is going to live or die. Like, we've got a new Halloween coming out this year.
And no one gives a shit.
I mean, people care.
No, but no one's like, is Laurie gonna die? I don't know, man.
Yeah, well, it doesn't help that they also announced they're making 2 at the same time, so we're all pretty sure Laurie's gonna at least live to the end.
Yeah.
But I feel like we've maybe gone long on Scream.
We have gone very long in this episode, so I will just say I hope that Scream 5 satiates us and our hunger for more Scream.
Okay. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about because there is no Scream 5. It's just Scream.
It's just Scream. 5 Cream. No, it actually is just Scream. Mm-hmm. This has been our longest episode to date. I'm really happy that we've done this. I never thought I would have this much to say about Scream 3 of all fucking things.
God.
But you know what, listeners, let us know. I know this movie has fans, and I know that people like it, and I also know that people fucking hate this movie. Yeah. So when you are in the Facebook group talking about this movie, please be civil.
Yes, please be kind to one another.
But yeah, so that'll conclude that. So before we announce what we're covering next week, I just want to say, standard housekeeping. Mm-hmm. If you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us on Twitter and Instagram at Horror Queers and join our Facebook Horror Queers group to hang out with other listeners. If you have a moment, please rate us and review us on your podcatcher of choice. Apple Podcasts is a great one. And if you want even more Horror Queers content, please support the show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/horrorqueers.
Yeah, it's a new year. Give us your money.
It's a new year. And because it's a new year, we will have the results of the 2020 Hereditaries, aka our horror version of the Oscars, which
Yay.
It's better than the Oscars, I'm not going to lie if I don't say so myself.
Yeah.
We'll also have episodes on CBS All Access's adaptation of The Stand, Apple TV's second season of Servant, and the controversial new film Promising Young Woman. And as we already mentioned that we're doing a month of threes this month, our audio commentary will be on Final Destination 3, aka the best entry in the Final Destination franchise.
Yeah.
Hot take. But Joe, we have to continue this month of threes. What are we talking about next week?
All right, so we tackled entry number 4 for my birthday pick last year, Trace, but I'm reserving a different pick for this year's birthday, so I had to get Hellraiser on the schedule somehow. So we're going to be talking about Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth.
I was so glad you did the subtitle.
Because they all have subtitles.
Yes, everyone. This is a kooky bananas movie. You actually don't have to have seen the first 2 to watch this, except to know that in the end of 2 pinheads in a pillar.
Yep. We will take it from there next week.
That's it. So, on that note, y'all enjoy Hellraiser 3, but we can cross out Scream 3.
Indeed, and cross out Horror Queers for our brand new year.
You've made it to the end of another bloody, disgusting podcast. Congratulations. If you like our programming, consider searching for other bloody, disgusting podcasts, such as Creepy, Horror Queers, The Boo Crew, SCP Archives, Nightlight, Margaret's Garden, Nightmare on Film Street, and more.
It was late in the afternoon when the professor and I took our way towards the east, whence I knew Jonathan was coming.
Jonathan Harker has asked me to note this, as he says he is hardly equal to the task, and he wants an exact record kept.
Dear Madam Mina, I have read your husband's so wonderful diary. Strange and terrible as it is true. I will pledge my life on it.
God preserve my sanity, for to this I am reduced. Safety and the assurance of safety are things of the past.
I am in hopes that I shall see more of you at Castle Dracula.
Listen to Regarding Dracula wherever you listen to podcasts, or find us online at bloody.fm.